The contract sat between them like a death sentence. Lena Zhao's hands trembled as she read the terms. Marriage, 1 year, 1 heir. Across the table, Victor Moretti, 70 years old, silver-haired, and more dangerous than any man she'd ever known, watched her with eyes that had seen too much blood. Your mother has 48 hours before my collectors come for what she owes, he said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. Sign this, and her debt disappears. Refuse, and you'll be identifying her body by the weekend. If you want to see how Lena survives this impossible deal, stay until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. The fluorescent lights of New York Presbyterian Hospital buzzed overhead like dying insects. Lena Zhao sat in the waiting room, her nursing scrubs still smelling of antiseptic, and the long double shift she'd just finished. Her phone vibrated for the 15th time in an hour. She didn't need to look to know who it was. The collectors. Her mother's gambling debt had spiraled so far beyond control that Lena had stopped counting the zeros. 200,000, maybe more. The kind of money that didn't just disappear, that came with interest rates designed to drown you, with men who smiled while they broke your fingers. Ms. Zhao. Lena looked up. The nurse standing in the doorway had that expression, the one healthcare workers wore when the news was bad, but they had to stay professional. Your mother is stable for now, but she needs to stay for observation. The stress-induced cardiac episode was serious. If she'd arrived 30 minutes later... The nurse didn't finish. She didn't have to. Lena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Another hospital bill. Another debt stacked on top of the mountain already crushing them. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she looked. Unknown number. Victoria Zhao's payment is 3 weeks overdue. Final notice. Your mother has 48 hours. Lena's hands shook as she typed back, I need more time. The response came instantly. Time is a luxury your mother can't afford. Mr. Moretti would like to meet you tonight, 10 p.m. The address will follow. Lena stared at the message. Victor Moretti. Even people who didn't live in the shadows knew that name. He owned half of New York's underground, casinos, protection rackets, shipping routes that never appeared on any manifest. He was also, according to every whispered story Lena had ever heard, utterly ruthless. Meeting him felt like signing her own death warrant. Not meeting him meant watching her mother die. The address led to a restaurant in Tribeca, the kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than Lena's weekly grocery budget. She stood outside at 9:57 p.m., still in her scrubs because she hadn't had time to go home and change, feeling desperately out of place among the well-dressed couples stepping out of town cars. A man in a black suit appeared at her elbow. Ms. Zhao. She nodded, her voice barely working. Yes. This way. He led her not through the restaurant's front entrance, but down a side alley to a private entrance. They climbed a narrow staircase to a second floor she suspected most diners didn't know existed. At the end of a hallway lined with original artwork that probably cost more than her mother's house, the man opened a heavy wooden door. Mr. Moretti will see you now. The room beyond was intimate, a private dining room with a single table set for two. Candles flickered despite the late spring warmth, and at the head of the table sat Victor Moretti. He was not what she expected. Lena had imagined someone grotesque, bloated with power and excess. Instead, Victor Moretti looked like he'd stepped from the pages of a luxury magazine. 70 years old, yes, but 70 in the way that money and discipline could craft. Silver hair swept back from a face with sharp cheekbones and a jaw that still held its definition. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and when he stood to greet her, he moved with the fluid grace of a much younger man. Ms. Zhao. His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a trace of an Italian accent worn smooth by decades in America. Please sit. Lena remained standing. I can't pay my mother's debt. Not all of it, but I can set up a payment plan. I work as a nurse, I can give you most of my paycheck every month, and sit down. Not harsh, but absolute. The voice of a man accustomed to obedience. Lena sat. Victor returned to his own chair, studying her with dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything, her exhaustion, her desperation, her defiance. Your mother owes me $237,000, he said. Plus interest, we're looking at $300,000. You make, what, $60,000 a year? 62, Lena said quietly. 62,000 a year before taxes. You have student loans, I assume. Yes. Rent, living expenses, the medications your mother takes for her blood pressure? Lena said nothing. He already knew the answer. Even if you gave me every penny you earned, it would take you decades to clear this debt. Victor leaned back in his chair. Your mother would be dead long before then. So would you, probably. This is not a problem that can be solved with good intentions and a payment plan. Then why am I here? Lena's voice came out sharper than intended. If you're going to kill her anyway, why waste my time with this meeting? Something flickered in Victor's eyes. Amusement? Respect? Because I'm going to make you an offer, one that will erase your mother's debt completely. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. What kind of offer? Victor gestured to the chair beside him. A man she hadn't noticed, another suit blending into the shadows, stepped forward and placed a leather portfolio on the table. Open it, Victor said. Lena's hands shook as she undid the clasp. Inside was a legal document, dense with text. Her eyes caught key phrases. Marriage contract, duration of 1 year, provision of a legitimate male heir, compensation for fulfillment of terms. She looked up, certain she'd misunderstood. You want me to marry you? Yes. And have your baby? Yes. Lena laughed, a sharp, almost hysterical sound. You're insane. I'm 23 years old. You're 70, Victor finished calmly. I'm aware of the age difference, Miss Zhao. This is not a romantic proposition. It's a business arrangement. This is human trafficking, Lena snapped. This is legal, Victor interrupted. Everything in that contract is perfectly legal. You would be my wife. You would live in my home. You would provide me with an heir. In exchange, your mother's debt disappears, and you receive a settlement of $5 million when our arrangement concludes. Lena stared at him. $5 million? Yes. Victor poured wine into 2 glasses, though Lena hadn't touched hers. I need a wife, Ms. Zhao. More specifically, I need a son. My father is dying. He has perhaps 6 months left. His will stipulates that control of the family businesses passes to whichever of his children produces a legitimate male heir first. You have siblings? A brother and a sister, both of whom would run our enterprises into the ground within a year. Victor's voice hardened. I have spent 50 years building what we have. I will not watch it destroyed by Adrian's incompetence or Valeria's greed. Lena shook her head. This is medieval. You can't just buy a wife and order up an heir like you're purchasing a car. Can I? Victor met her eyes. You need $300,000 by the end of the week. I need a son before my father dies. We can help each other. Or you could just forgive my mother's debt, Lena said desperately, out of the goodness of your heart. Victor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I didn't build an empire on goodness, Mrs. Zhao. I built it on mutually beneficial arrangements. This is one of them. And if I refuse, then your mother has 48 hours. Victor sipped his wine. I should mention that the collectors I employ are not gentle men. They will take her house first, then her car. Then, when there's nothing left to take, they will make an example of her. They have to. It's bad for business when debts go unpaid. Lena felt bile rise in her throat. You're threatening to torture my mother. I'm stating facts. Victor set down his glass. You have until midnight tomorrow to decide. Sign the contract and your mother's debt disappears immediately. Walk away, and I can't protect her from the consequences of her choices. Her choices? She has a gambling addiction. She's sick. Then get her help. After you've solved the immediate problem of keeping her alive. Victor stood, indicating the meeting was over. The contract gives you considerable protections, Miss Zhao. Read it carefully. You'll find I'm offering you far more than most men in my position would. Lena grabbed the portfolio, her fingers white-knuckled around the leather. I need time to think. You have 26 hours. Victor walked her to the door. My driver will take you home. I'll expect your answer by midnight tomorrow. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat at her tiny kitchen table in her studio apartment in Queens, reading the contract by lamplight. It was thorough, horrifyingly thorough. Every clause was carefully worded, every contingency planned. Marriage duration, 1 year from date of ceremony. Primary obligation, provide a legitimate male heir to Victor Moretti. Secondary obligations, appear in public as Victor Moretti's wife when required. Reside in the primary residence. Maintain appropriate discretion regarding family business matters. Compensation, immediate erasure of all debts owed by Victoria Zhao. Monthly allowance of $10,000 for personal expenses. Final settlement of $5 million upon successful completion of contract terms or birth of a son, whichever comes first. Termination clauses. Contract may be dissolved by mutual agreement. In the event of divorce prior to the birth of a son, Lina Zhao forfeits the final settlement but retains the monthly allowances already provided. In the event of Victor Moretti's death, Lina Zhao receives the full settlement regardless of whether a child has been produced. There was more. Pages of legal language about prenuptial agreements, inheritance rights, custody arrangements. But one clause kept drawing Lina's eye. The party of the second part, Lina Zhao, retains full autonomy over her person and may refuse any physical contact she does not consent to. The party of the first part, Victor Moretti, acknowledges that procreation must be achieved through mutual agreement. He was giving her an out, a way to say no, even after signing. Lina thought about her mother, lying in that hospital bed with a heart that couldn't take much more stress. She thought about the collectors, the kind of men who broke bones as easily as promises. She thought about $5 million, enough to disappear, to start over, to build a life that didn't involve drowning in other people's debts. She thought about Victor Moretti's dark eyes, the way he'd studied her like she was a puzzle to be solved. At 11:47 p.m. the next night, Lina's phone rang. Ms. Zhao. Victor's voice was as smooth as she remembered. Have you decided? Lina closed her eyes. I have conditions. A pause. I'm listening. My mother never knows the real reason for this marriage. As far as she's concerned, we met and fell in love. Agreed. I want my own bank account. The monthly allowance goes there and I control it completely. Agreed. I want to finish my nursing degree. I'm 6 months away from my BSN. You'll have private tutors if you prefer, or you can attend classes. Your choice. Lina gripped the phone tighter. And I want your word that you won't hurt my mother. Ever. No matter what happens between us. You have it, Victor said quietly. Anything else? Yes. Lina's voice steadied. I want this in writing. All of it. Every condition I just listed, in the contract before I sign. My lawyer will have the amended version ready by tomorrow morning. There was something in Victor's voice. Approval? You negotiate well, Ms. Zhao. I'm signing my life away, Lina said bitterly. The least I can do is read the fine print. Indeed. A pause. There will be a car outside your building at 9 a.m. tomorrow. It will bring you to my lawyer's office to sign the papers. Bring identification and any personal items you want to keep. You'll be moving into my home immediately after. The reality of it hit Lina like a physical blow. Tomorrow? I move in tomorrow? Unless you'd prefer to wait until after the wedding. We can marry at City Hall this week, if you're ready. This week? Lina's voice rose. I need time to... Time is what we don't have, Victor interrupted, not unkindly. My father is dying, Ms. Zhao. Every day we delay is a day we can't afford to lose. But if you truly need more time to prepare, I can give you 3 days, no more. Lina wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to wake up from this nightmare. Instead, she heard herself say, 3 days? I need 3 days. Done. The car will come for you on Friday. Victor's voice softened slightly. I know this isn't what you wanted for your life. I'm not a fool. But I will keep my word, Lina. Every promise I've made, I will honor. He hung up before she could respond. Lina sat in the darkness of her apartment, the phone still pressed to her ear, and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Oh, Friday arrived too quickly. Lina told her mother she'd met someone, a businessman, older but kind, who wanted to move quickly. Her mother, still weak from her hospital stay, had been delighted, thrilled even. Finally, her daughter had found someone who could provide stability, security, a future that didn't involve drowning in debt. If only she knew. The car that arrived at 9 a.m. was a black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark Lena couldn't see inside. The driver, the same man from the restaurant, opened the door without speaking. "Good morning, Ms. Zhao." Lena slid into the back seat, her 2 suitcases loaded into the trunk. Everything she owned fit into 2 bags. Somehow, that felt appropriate. The drive to the lawyer's office took 30 minutes through Manhattan traffic. Lena watched the city slide past the windows, her city, the place she'd lived her entire life, and felt like she was seeing it for the last time. The lawyer's office was in Midtown, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. Victor was already there, looking elegant in a navy suit. He stood when Lena entered. "Ms. Zhao?" He gestured to the chair beside him. "Shall we?" The signing took less than 20 minutes. The lawyer, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and sharper questions, walked Lena through every clause, every amendment, every condition she'd demanded. All of it was there, exactly as she'd specified. "Do you understand everything you're signing?" the lawyer asked. Lena met Victor's eyes across the table. He watched her steadily. No pressure, no threat, just waiting. "I understand," Lena said. She signed her name in 12 places. Victor signed beside her. The lawyer notarized everything, then handed Lena a copy of the completed contract. "Congratulations," the lawyer said, though her expression suggested she thought Lena was making a terrible mistake. "You're now legally bound." "We'll marry on Monday," Victor said, standing. "City Hall, small ceremony, unless you'd prefer something more elaborate." Lena almost laughed. "City Hall is fine." "Then it's settled." Victor offered his arm. "Shall we go home?" Home. The word felt foreign. Lena took his arm because refusing seemed petty, and they walked together to the elevator. The driver was waiting with the car outside. They drove north, out of Manhattan and into Westchester County. The neighborhoods grew wealthier with each mile. Larger houses, more land, higher walls. Finally, the car turned onto a private road that wound through woods for nearly a quarter-mile before emerging at a gate. The estate beyond was stunning. The main house was a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, all clean lines and elegant proportions. Gardens stretched in every direction, immaculately maintained. A separate guest house sat near a pool that looked like it belonged in a resort. Everything whispered of money, power, control. "Welcome home," Victor said quietly. The car stopped at the front entrance. Staff materialized, a housekeeper, a butler, people whose job was apparently to manage Victor's life. They took Lena's bags without comment. Victor led her inside. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, original artwork, furniture that looked uncomfortable but probably cost more than Lena's student loans. Everything was pristine, perfect, cold. "Your rooms are upstairs," Victor said, guiding her to a sweeping staircase. "You'll have complete privacy. I'm in the east wing, you'll be in the west. We share common spaces, the dining room, the library, the pool, but your bedroom and sitting room are entirely yours." He opened a door to reveal a suite that could have housed 3 families. The bedroom alone was larger than Lena's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. The bathroom had a tub the size of a small pool. "If you need anything changed, tell Mrs. Chen," Victor continued. "She manages the house. Meals are served at 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m., but if you prefer different times, we can adjust." Lena stood in the middle of the bedroom, feeling utterly lost. "This is too much." "This is your home now," Victor said. "You should be comfortable." "Comfortable?" Lena turned to face him. "I just signed a contract to have your baby. I don't think comfort is really on the table." Victor's expression didn't change. "We have a year, Lena. You don't have to decide anything today." "Except I already did. I already decided." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I sold myself to save my mother." "You made a choice," Victor corrected gently. "A difficult one, yes, but a choice nonetheless. You could have walked away and watched her die." "Yes." Victor moved toward the door. "I'll leave you to settle in. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join me. If not, Mrs. Chen will bring something to your room." He was almost to the door when Lena spoke again. "Why me?" Victor paused. "I'm sorry." "Why me?" Lena repeated. You're Victor Moretti. You could have any woman you wanted, younger, prettier, more suitable. So why offer this deal to me?" Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Because you didn't beg. When you came to that restaurant, you didn't plead or cry or offer me anything I wanted to hear. You negotiated. You demanded conditions. You fought for what mattered to you." He met her eyes. "That kind of strength is rare, Lena. And it's exactly what I need." He left before she could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. Lena stood alone in her golden cage, surrounded by luxury she'd never wanted, bound by a contract she couldn't escape, and wondered if strength would be enough to survive what came next. The weekend passed in a blur of surreal domesticity. Lena explored the house, each room more extravagant than the last. She met the staff, Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, Marcus, the head of security, Elena, the chef, a rotating cast of gardeners, cleaners, and people whose jobs seemed to be maintaining the illusion of perfection. They were all unfailingly polite and utterly impersonal. No one asked questions. No one seemed surprised by Lena's sudden appearance. Victor kept his distance. She saw him at meals, breakfast on Saturday, dinner both nights, but their conversations remained surface level. He asked about her comfort, her needs, whether the house suited her. She answered in monosyllables, still too raw to pretend this was normal. Sunday night, unable to sleep, Lena found herself wandering the darkened house. She ended up in the library, a two-story room lined with books that actually looked read, not just decorative. She was examining a first edition of something in Italian when Victor's voice came from the doorway. "Can't sleep?" Lena jumped, nearly dropping the book. "You startled me." "My apologies." Victor entered, wearing a black robe over what looked like silk pajamas. Even at midnight, he looked elegant. "I often come here when I can't quiet my mind." "What keeps you awake?" Lena asked before she could stop herself. Victor smiled slightly. "Tonight? Tomorrow." He moved to a sidebar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He offered one to Lena. She took it, surprising herself. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a welcome burn, something to ground her. "Having second thoughts?" Victor asked. 100 thoughts, Lena admitted. Maybe 1,000th. "You can still leave." Victor's voice was quiet. "The contract includes a cooling-off period. If you walk away before we marry, you forfeit the settlement, but your mother's debt remains erased." Lena stared at him. "You're giving me an out? I'm giving you a choice." Victor sipped his whiskey. "I need many things, Lena, but I don't need an unwilling wife. If you're going to do this, it has to be your decision." "It was my decision," Lena said. "That's what makes it so terrible." Victor watched her for a long moment. "Tell me something. If money wasn't a factor, if your mother's debt had never existed, what would you want from your life?" The question caught Lena off guard. "I don't know. I've spent so long just trying to survive. I never really thought about what comes after." "Think about it now." Lena closed her eyes. "I'd want to finish my degree. Become a nurse practitioner, maybe. Work with underserved communities, people who can't afford regular health care." She laughed bitterly. "I'd want to help people, ironically enough." "That's not ironic," Victor said. "That's admirable." "Is it?" Lena opened her eyes. "I'm about to marry a man I don't love for money. That's pretty much the opposite of admirable." "You're saving your mother's life," Victor countered. "You're sacrificing your freedom for someone you love. That's not mercenary, Lena. That's devotion." Lena didn't know what to say to that. They stood in silence, the weight of tomorrow pressing down on both of them. "We don't have to be enemies," Victor said finally. "This arrangement doesn't have to be a prison. What else would you call it?" "A partnership." Victor set down his glass. "We both want something the other can provide. If we're going to spend a year together, we might as well make it bearable." Lena laughed, a sound without humor. "Bearable, that's romantic." "I never promised romance," Victor reminded her. "But I can promise respect, honesty, and perhaps if we're lucky, friendship." "Friendship," Lena repeated, "with the man who bought me." "I didn't buy you," Victor said, and for the first time there was steel in his voice. "I offered you a transaction. You accepted. That makes us business partners, not owner and property." Business partners who are getting married and trying to have a baby. Unusual business partners, Victor conceded, but partners nonetheless. Lena finished her whiskey, feeling it settle warm in her stomach. I should sleep. Tomorrow is going to be difficult. Yes. Victor walked her to the door. For what it's worth, Lena, I will try to make this as easy for you as I can. Why? The question escaped before Lena could stop it. Why do you care if it's easy for me? Victor was quiet for a moment. Because despite what you may think, I'm not a monster. I'm simply a man who's run out of choices. He met her eyes. We have that in common, at least. He left her there in the library doorway, and Lena watched him disappear into the darkness of the house, wondering if he was right. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Both of them trapped by circumstances neither had chosen. Both of them making impossible deals to protect what mattered. Both of them stepping into a future neither could predict. Tomorrow, she would become Mrs. Victor Moretti. She would sign papers that bound her life to his, that turned a desperate bargain into legal reality. She would walk into City Hall a free woman and walk out as the wife of New York's most dangerous man, and somehow, despite everything, she would have to find a way to survive it. Lena returned to her bedroom, crawled under silk sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, and stared at the ceiling until dawn broke over the gardens. When morning came, she rose, showered, and put on the simple white dress Mrs. Chen had left hanging in her closet. At 10 a.m., Victor knocked on her door. "Ready?" he asked. Lena looked at him. This man who was about to become her husband, this stranger she'd bound her life to, this enigma who'd given her both prison and salvation. "No," she said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." They drove to City Hall in silence. The ceremony took 7 minutes. The clerk who married them looked bored. There were no flowers, no music, no guests, just two people making vows that meant everything and nothing. When it was done, Victor slipped a platinum band onto Lena's finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably had her measured without her knowing. "You may kiss the bride," the clerk said automatically. Victor looked at Lena, a question in his eyes. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly. His kiss was brief, chaste, appropriate for the stranger he'd just married. But Lena felt it anyway. The warmth of his lips, the gentle way he cradled her face, the carefulness of a man who knew exactly how much power he held. When he pulled back, they were married, Mrs. Victor Moretti. The name felt like a costume she didn't know how to wear. They drove back to the estate in the same silence they'd left in. But as they pulled through the gates, Victor spoke. "Thank you," he said quietly. Lena turned to him, surprised. "For what?" "For doing this. I know what it cost you." "You paid $300,000, Lena said. "You know exactly what it cost me." "I know what I paid," Victor corrected. "That's not the same as what it cost you." He got out of the car before Lena could respond, offering his hand to help her out. She took it because refusing seemed childish, and together they walked into the house that was now legally theirs. Their marriage had begun, and Lena had no idea how it would end. The first week of marriage passed like a fever dream, disorienting, surreal, and utterly isolating. Victor left for work before Lena woke and returned after she'd gone to bed. The house, despite its size and staff, felt empty. Lena spent her days wandering rooms she had no claim to, reading books from a library that wasn't hers, swimming in a pool that offered no escape from the gilded cage she'd locked herself into. Mrs. Chen delivered meals at precise intervals. Elena prepared food Lena barely touched. Marcus and his security team moved through the property like ghosts, visible but never intrusive. Everyone performed their roles with mechanical efficiency, and no one spoke to Lena unless absolutely necessary. By Thursday, Lena felt like she was disappearing. She was standing in the garden watching rain batter the roses when her phone rang. Her mother's number. "Lena, sweetheart, I haven't heard from you in days. How's married life?" Lena forced brightness into her voice. "It's good, Mom. Just adjusting." "I still can't believe you didn't let me come to the wedding." Her mother's tone carried hurt beneath the cheerfulness. "I would have loved to see you in your dress." "It was very small," Lena said, guilt twisting her stomach. "We wanted something intimate." "Well, When am I going to meet this mysterious husband of yours? You've been married almost a week, and I haven't even seen a photo. Lena closed her eyes. Soon, Mom, I promise. How are you feeling? Much better now that I'm not worried sick about. Her mother paused. Well, those debts, they just disappeared. The collection calls stopped. I don't understand it, but I'm not questioning miracles. Miracles bought with Lena's soul, but she couldn't say that. I'm glad you're feeling better, Lena managed. They talked for a few more minutes before her mother had to go. When Lena hung up, she felt lonelier than before. She was surrounded by luxury she didn't want, married to a man she barely knew, living a lie she couldn't tell anyone. The rain continued falling. Lena stood in it, letting it soak through her clothes, wondering if she could drown in water that fell from the sky. You'll catch pneumonia. Lena spun around. Victor stood on the covered patio, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. He wore a suit despite the late hour, though he'd loosened his tie. I didn't know you were home, Lena said. I just arrived. He gestured toward the house. Come inside, you're soaked. Lena looked down at herself. Her clothes clung to her skin, her hair hung in wet ropes. She must have looked pathetic. I'm fine, she said. You're standing in a thunderstorm. Victor's voice was patient but firm. Come inside, Lena. She didn't have the energy to argue. She followed him into the house, dripping water on marble floors that probably cost more than most people's cars. Mrs. Chen appeared with towels as if summoned by telepathy. I'll draw a bath, she said, already moving toward the stairs. That's not necessary, Lena started, but Mrs. Chen was gone. Victor handed Lena one of the towels. Why were you standing in the rain? Why do you care? The question came out sharper than intended. Victor was quiet for a moment. Because you're my wife, and because you look like you're about to shatter. The unexpected gentleness in his voice nearly broke her. Lena wrapped the towel around herself, suddenly desperate to escape before she started crying. I should go upstairs, she said. Wait. Victor caught her arm, his touch light enough that she could easily pull away. Have dinner with me, please. Lena stared at him. Now? I haven't eaten. I suspect you haven't either. His dark eyes searched her face. We're married, Lena. We should probably speak to each other occasionally. Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. When you put it that way. Is that a yes? It's a yes. 20 minutes later, Lena sat across from Victor at the dining table, wearing dry clothes and feeling marginally more human. Elena had prepared pasta with a wine sauce that smelled incredible. Victor poured wine for both of them. You've been avoiding me, Lena said. I've been giving you space, Victor corrected. There's a difference. Space feels a lot like abandonment when you're alone in a house with strangers. Victor set down his wine glass. You're right. I apologize. I thought you'd want distance. Time to adjust without me hovering. I don't want hovering, Lena said, but I don't want to be invisible either. You could never be invisible. Victor's voice was quiet. You light up every room you enter, whether you know it or not. Lena didn't know what to say to that. She focused on her pasta instead, the silence stretching between them. Tell me about nursing, Victor said finally. Why did you choose it? My father died when I was 12, Lena said. Cancer. The nurses at the hospital were the only people who made him feel human at the end. Not a patient, not a dying man, just him. She pushed food around her plate. I wanted to do that for other people. A noble calling. A practical one, Lena corrected. Nursing meant stable employment, good benefits, the ability to take care of my mother. And yourself? Lena looked up, surprised. What? Did you think about taking care of yourself when you chose nursing? That's not really how my life works, Lena said. I take care of other people. That's what I do. Victor studied her with those penetrating dark eyes. Perhaps that's why you're so good at it. And perhaps that's why you're standing in thunderstorms. Because you've spent so long caring for everyone else. You've forgotten how to care for yourself. The observation hit too close to home. Lena deflected with a question. What about you? Why the family business? Victor's expression shifted, something hardening behind his eyes. I didn't choose it. I was born into it. My father made his fortune in shipping, legitimate shipping initially, but over the years, Other opportunities presented themselves, more profitable opportunities. Illegal ones. Let's say morally ambiguous, Victor said with a slight smile. Though, yes, some cross legal boundaries. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. Does that bother you? Lena asked. The illegal parts? It did, once. When I was young and still believed the world operated on principles of fairness and justice. Victor sipped his wine, but I learned that the law protects those who can afford it and crushes those who can't. So I stopped worrying about legal and started focusing on right and wrong. Are they different? Often. Victor leaned back in his chair. I run protection rackets, Lena. But the businesses I protect, restaurants, shops, small enterprises, they actually stay protected. The police can't or won't help them. I can and do. Is that illegal? Yes. Is it wrong? I don't think so. You're rationalizing, Lena said. Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply realistic about the world we live in. Victor met her eyes. I've done things I'm not proud of, but I've also kept thousands of people employed, safe, and prosperous. The world isn't black and white. No, Lena agreed quietly. It's mostly gray. They finished dinner talking about safer topics, books, music, the absurdity of modern art. Victor was surprisingly well read, with opinions on everything from Tolstoy to contemporary fiction. Lena found herself relaxing, the conversation flowing more naturally than she'd expected. When they'd finished, Victor walked her to the stairs. Thank you for having dinner with me, he said. Thank you for asking, Lena replied. Then, before she could stop herself, could we do this again? Not just tonight, but regularly? Something softened in Victor's expression. I'd like that very much. Good. Lena started up the stairs, then paused. Victor? Yes? Why did you really choose me? And don't say it was because I negotiated well. There's more to it than that. Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of something Lena couldn't quite identify. Because when you looked at me in that restaurant, you didn't see a monster or a savior. You saw a man making you an offer. Most people can't see past the reputation, the power, the fear. But you did. And I thought, perhaps with you, I could be more than what I've been forced to become. He left before Lena could respond, disappearing into the east wing of the house. Lena stood on the stairs, her heart hammering, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, a transaction, a deal with clear terms and expected outcomes. But Victor was making it complicated with his honesty, his vulnerability, his quiet admission that he wanted to be seen as human. Lena went to bed that night with too many thoughts tangling in her mind, and when she finally slept, she dreamed of dark eyes and contracts written in ink that wouldn't wash away. The next morning, everything changed. Lena woke to voices in the hallway outside her room, raised voices, angry and sharp. She pulled on a robe and opened her door to find Victor arguing with Marcus. I don't care what your protocols say, Victor was saying, his voice dangerously quiet. She's my wife. She goes where she wants, when she wants. Sir, with respect, the threats against you have escalated. We can't guarantee her safety if... Then hire more security. Victor's tone allowed no argument. But she is not a prisoner in this house. Marcus noticed Lena standing in the doorway. Mrs. Moretti, my apologies for the disturbance. What's going on? Lena asked. Victor turned to her. Marcus seems to think you need an armed escort to leave the property. I was explaining that you're a free person who can come and go as you please. There have been credible threats, ma'am, Marcus said to Lena, against Mr. Moretti and anyone close to him. Until we've assessed the situation, I strongly recommend... I understand, Lena interrupted. But I'm not going to live like a prisoner because someone might want to hurt Victor. Lena, Victor started. No. She met his eyes. You said this wouldn't be a prison. You promised. If I can't even leave the house without armed guards, what's the difference? Victor and Marcus exchanged a look. Finally, Victor nodded. Compromise, he said. You can go anywhere you want, but Marcus assigns one security person. Not armed guards, just one person. Discreet. Someone who can help if there's trouble. It wasn't freedom, but it was closer. Lena nodded. Okay. One person. I'll arrange it. Marcus said, clearly unhappy but accepting defeat. After he left, Victor turned to Lena. Where were you planning to go? The hospital, Lena said. To see my mother. I haven't visited since... She gestured vaguely at the house, at their situation. Since this all started. Then go, Victor said gently. See your mother. Just be careful, please. Are these threats real? Lena asked. Or is Marcus being paranoid? Victor's expression darkened. They're real. My brother and sister don't approve of our marriage. They see you as a threat to their inheritance. I'm not a threat to anyone. You're married to me. That makes you a target. Victor touched her face, the gesture so unexpected that Lena froze. I won't let anyone hurt you, Lena, but I need you to be smart. One security person. That's all I'm asking. Lena nodded, her skin tingling where his fingers had been. An hour later, she was in a car with a woman named Sarah, young, professional, and apparently trained in about 17 different ways to kill someone. Sarah drove Lena to the hospital without comment, then waited in the lobby while Lena went up to her mother's room. Victoria Zhao looked better than she had in months. The color had returned to her cheeks, and she was sitting up in bed reading a magazine. Lena. She set the magazine aside, beaming. I wasn't expecting you today. I know, I'm sorry I haven't visited sooner. Lena kissed her mother's cheek. How are you feeling? Wonderful, actually. The doctors say my blood pressure is the best it's been in years. Her mother studied Lena's face. You look tired, sweetheart. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Lena lied. Just adjusting to married life. Tell me about Victor, her mother said eagerly. What's he like? What does he do? Lena had prepared for these questions. He's complicated, successful businessman, older than me but kind. He treats me well. How much older? Lena hesitated. 47 years? Her mother's eyes widened. Lena! I know how it sounds, Lena said quickly. But it's not what you think. He's not some creepy old man. He's just... We connected. And age is just a number, right? Her mother didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. They talked about other things. Her mother's treatment plan, the hospital food, neighborhood gossip. Normal things, comforting things. When visiting hours ended, Lena's mother hugged her tightly. I'm proud of you, she whispered, for finding someone who can give you the life you deserve. Guilt twisted in Lena's chest. Thanks, Mom. Sarah drove her back to the estate in silence. When they pulled through the gates, Lena saw an unfamiliar car in the driveway, a sleek silver Aston Martin that screamed wealth and ego. Who's that? Lena asked. Sarah's expression tightened. Adrian Moretti, Victor's brother. Ice flooded Lena's veins. He's here? Apparently. Sarah parked the car. Stay close to me, Mrs. Moretti, and don't let him bait you. They entered the house together. Voices drifted from the study, Victor's, controlled and cold, and another man's, sharp with mockery. I just wanted to meet her, the other man was saying. My new sister-in-law. You can't blame me for being curious about the girl desperate enough to marry a dying old man. Careful, Adrian. Victor's voice could have cut glass. Oh, come on. Everyone knows this is a business arrangement. You needed a womb. She needed money. It's almost romantic in its cynicism. Lena walked into the study before Sarah could stop her. Two men stood by the fireplace, Victor, rigid with controlled anger, and another man who had to be Adrian. He was younger, maybe 50, with the same dark eyes as Victor, but none of the gravitas. He looked like a man who'd never been told no, who'd coasted on family money and natural charm his entire life. Ah, Adrian said, turning to Lena with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The bride herself, even prettier than the photos. Lena, this is my brother Adrian, Victor said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a social visit. He was just leaving. Was I? Adrian moved closer to Lena, studying her like a specimen under glass. Tell me, Lena, may I call you Lena? How does it feel to be Victor's latest acquisition? Does he keep you in a vault with his other treasures? That's enough, Victor said sharply. I'm just making conversation, Adrian protested. Getting to know the woman who's going to produce my nephew? Or is it a niece? Do you know yet? Lena met his eyes, refusing to be intimidated. I'm not an acquisition or a breeding mare. I'm Victor's wife, and you're being incredibly rude. Adrian laughed, genuinely amused. She has teeth. How delightful. Most of Victor's previous women were so compliant. Get out, Victor said, his voice deadly quiet. I'll go, Adrian said, raising his hands in mock surrender. But not before I deliver Valeria's message. She wants to meet Lana, officially, at the charity gala next Friday. Absolutely not, Victor said. It's not optional, brother. Father's orders. He wants to meet your new wife before he dies. And you know how he feels about disappointment. Adrian headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Lena? A word of advice. In this family, everyone's playing chess. Don't be a pawn. He left, his laughter echoing through the house. Lena turned to Victor. What gala? Victor's jaw was tight. An annual charity event my family hosts. 500 people, press coverage, the city's elite. It's a spectacle. And your father will be there? Yes, along with Adrian, Valeria, and everyone else trying to take what's mine. Victor poured himself a whiskey, his hand not quite steady. I didn't want you exposed to them yet. You're not ready. Not ready? Lena felt anger spark. I'm not some delicate flower, Victor. If I have to meet your family eventually, it might as well be now. You don't understand what they're like, Victor said. Adrian was playing nice today. At the gala, with an audience, they'll be vicious. They'll try to humiliate you, to prove you don't belong. Then teach me, Lena said. You have a week. Teach me how to survive them. Victor looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're serious. Completely. You said we're partners, right? Then partner with me. Show me how this world works, how your family operates, what I need to know to hold my own. Victor set down his whiskey. If I do this, if I bring you into my world, there's no going back. You'll see things, learn things that can't be unlearned. I'm already in your world, Lena pointed out. I'm just stumbling around blind. I'd rather see clearly, even if what I'm seeing is ugly. Victor studied her, and Lena saw respect dawn in his eyes. All right, we start tomorrow. Be ready at 9 a.m. For what? Your education. Victor moved toward the door, then paused. And Lena, thank you for standing up to Adrian. Most people are too afraid. I'm terrified, Lena admitted, but I'm also tired of feeling powerless. Victor smiled, the expression transforming his face. Then we'll make sure you never feel that way again. The next morning, Lena's education began. Victor started with the basics, the structure of his family's empire, the legitimate businesses that funded the illegitimate ones, the complex web of alliances and enemies that governed their world. He spoke plainly, holding nothing back, treating Lena like an equal rather than a child who needed protection from harsh truths. My grandfather started with a single shipping vessel, Victor explained as they sat in his study. By the time my father took over, we had a fleet. Now we control shipping routes from New York to Naples, legal and otherwise. Otherwise meaning drugs? Weapons? Lena asked. Sometimes. More often, it's about avoiding taxes, bypassing regulations, moving goods that aren't strictly illegal but aren't strictly legal either. Victor showed her charts, documents, the paper trail of an empire built on moral ambiguity. I've been working for 30 years to transition more of our operations to legitimate business, but old habits die hard, and some of our partners prefer the shadows. Why not just go completely legitimate? Because the people who depend on us, the restaurants, the unions, the small businesses, they need someone who operates outside the law. The legal system has failed them. We haven't. Victor's voice was firm. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's necessary. Over the next few days, Victor taught Lena the unspoken rules of his world. How to read a room, identify threats, navigate conversations laden with hidden meaning, how to dress for power, speak with authority, carry herself like she belonged. At the gala, everyone will be watching you, Victor said during one of their sessions. Looking for weakness, for proof that you're out of your depth. You need to project absolute confidence, even when you're terrified. Fake it till you make it, Lena suggested. Exactly, Victor smiled. You're a quick study. They also spent time together outside of lessons. Quiet dinners where they talked about everything and nothing. walks through the garden where Victor told stories about his childhood, about his mother who died when he was young, about the weight of inheriting an empire he'd never asked for. "Did you ever want something else?" Lena asked one evening as they sat by the pool, watching the sun set over the property. "Once," Victor admitted. "I wanted to be a professor. Literature, specifically. I love books. Loved the way stories could transport you to different worlds." "What happened?" "My father happened. He made it very clear that my dreams were irrelevant. I was the eldest son. My duty was to the family, not to myself." Victor's voice carried old bitterness. "So I gave up the university and learned to run an empire instead." "Do you regret it?" "Every day," Victor said quietly. "But regret doesn't change the past. It only poisons the present." Lena reached out, touching his hand. The gesture surprised both of them. Victor looked down at their joined hands, his expression unreadable. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "What did you expect?" "Someone more mercenary. Someone who saw this as purely transactional." Victor turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. "But you're not like that. You care, even when it would be easier not to." "Is that good or bad?" Lena asked. "I don't know yet." Victor's thumb traced circles on her palm, the touch sending shivers through Lena. "But I'm beginning to think it might be the best thing that's happened to me in a very long time." The moment stretched between them, weighted with possibility. Lena's heart raced. This was dangerous territory. Feeling things for Victor, letting herself see him as more than just the man who'd bought her contract. But she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. The way he listened when she spoke, the gentleness beneath his harsh exterior, the loneliness that echoed her own. "Victor," she started, not knowing what she wanted to say. Her phone rang, shattering the moment. Lena pulled away to answer it, seeing her mother's number. "Mom, is everything okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, but I had a visitor today, a woman named Valeria Moritai. She said she's Victor's sister?" Lena's blood went cold. What did she want? "She asked questions about you, about us, about how we met Victor." Her mother sounded worried. "She was very polite, but something about her made me uncomfortable." "Is everything all right, Lena?" "Everything's fine," Lena lied, meeting Victor's eyes across the pool. His expression had gone hard. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing, really. I don't know much about how you met." A pause. "Lena, what's going on? This woman, the way she looked at me. I felt like she was trying to find something to use against you." "She probably was," Lena admitted. "Victor's family is complicated. His sister doesn't approve of our marriage." "Why not?" "It's a long story, Mom. Just, if anyone else from Victor's family contacts you, don't tell them anything, and call me immediately." After she hung up, Lena turned to Victor. "Valeria went to see my mother." "I know." Victor's voice was ice. "Marcus just texted me. She had her followed to the hospital." "What is she looking for?" "Leverage. Proof that you're not who you claim to be. Something she can use to invalidate our marriage." Victor stood, pacing. "She's more dangerous than Adrian. He's all bluster and ego. Valeria is calculating, strategic." "Then we need to be more strategic," Lena said, standing to face him. "We need to control the narrative before she does." "What do you have in mind?" Lena thought quickly. "At the gala, we don't just defend against their attacks. We go on offense. We present ourselves as a united front, a real couple, genuinely in love. Make them work to find cracks instead of having them handed over." Victor studied her. "You want to pretend we're in love?" "I want to make them believe we are," Lena corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Victor's voice was quiet, his eyes searching hers. Lena's breath caught. The question held layers she wasn't ready to examine. "We should practice," she said, deflecting. "If we're going to convince them, we need to be convincing." "Practice being in love?" Victor's mouth quirked. "How does one practice that?" "Like this." Lena closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was meant to be clinical, a rehearsal for the performance they'd need to give at the gala. But the moment their lips met, something ignited. Victor's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and Lena melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt. This wasn't pretend. This was real. The heat, the desire, the desperate need that had been building between them for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "That was," he started. "Practice," Lena finished, her voice shaking. "Just practice." "Right, practice." But Victor's hand stayed on her waist, his thumb tracing patterns on her hip. "We should probably practice more, to make it convincing." "Probably," Lena agreed. They stood there in the growing darkness, neither willing to let go, both knowing they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. The gala was in 3 days, and Lena was beginning to realize that the most dangerous person in Victor's world might not be his family. It might be Victor himself, and the way she was starting to feel about him. The kiss changed everything and nothing. Victor became more careful around her after that night by the pool, as though he'd touched something fragile and feared breaking it. Their lessons continued, but now there was a charge in the air between them, a tension that made every accidental touch feel deliberate, every shared glance loaded with meaning. They didn't talk about what had happened. They practiced their public personas instead, learning to move as a couple, to finish each other's sentences, to communicate with nothing more than a look. Victor taught Lena how to walk into a room on his arm, how to stand beside him with her chin up and her shoulders back, projecting the kind of confidence that made people believe she belonged. "You're a natural," Victor said during one of their rehearsals, watching as Lena navigated an imaginary crowd in the ballroom. "You move like you were born to this." "I'm faking it," Lena reminded him. "Every second of it. The best performances are the ones where you believe your own lies." Victor stepped closer, adjusting the invisible necklace at her throat with fingers that lingered just a moment too long. "At the gala, you need to believe you're exactly where you're supposed to be. That you chose this life, this marriage, this man." "Did I choose it?" Lena asked quietly. "Or did desperation choose it for me?" Victor's expression flickered with something that might have been pain. "Does the distinction matter?" "It does to me." They stood facing each other in the empty ballroom, the space between them shrinking with every breath. Victor's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "I want you to know something," he said, his voice rough. "Whatever happens at the gala, whatever my family throws at you, you don't face it alone. I'll be right beside you." "Why?" Lena leaned into his touch despite herself. "Why do you care so much?" "Because you're braver than anyone I've ever met," Victor said simply. "And because somewhere in the middle of this arrangement, you stopped being a contract and started being someone I'd be a fool to lose." Before Lena could respond, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway with her impeccable timing. "Sir, the stylist is here for Mrs. Moretti's fitting." The spell broke. Victor stepped back, his expression shuddering. "Of course, I'll leave you to it." He was gone before Lena could find her voice. The stylist turned out to be a tiny woman named Margot, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She brought with her a team of assistants and enough garment bags to outfit an entire wedding party. "Mr. Moretti was very specific about what he wanted," Margot said, directing her team to set up in Lena's suite. "Something that commands attention but doesn't scream for it. Elegant, powerful, sophisticated. You're making a statement tomorrow night, Mrs. Moretti. The statement is, I belong here, and you will respect me." Over the next 3 hours, Lena tried on what felt like 100 dresses. Each one was more beautiful than the last. Silk and satin, beading and lace, colors that ranged from midnight blue to deep emerald to classic black. But none of them felt right until Margot pulled out a gown that made Lena's breath catch. It was the color of fresh blood, a red so deep it was almost crimson. The dress was deceptively simple. A fitted bodice with a sweetheart neckline that showed just enough skin to be daring without being scandalous, and a skirt that flowed like water when Lena moved. But it was the back that made the dress extraordinary, or rather, the lack of one. The fabric plunged in a dramatic V that stopped just above the curve of her lower back, held together by delicate straps that crisscrossed like art. "This one," Margot said with satisfaction as Lena turned in front of the mirror. "This is the one." Lena barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror looked powerful, dangerous even. She looked like someone who could stand beside Victor Moretti and not be diminished by his shadow. "Mr. Moretti will approve," Margot said, already making notes about final alterations. "Trust me, I've dressed 3 generations of Moretti women. I know what works." After Margot and her team left, Lena found herself unable to stop thinking about the dress, about the woman she'd seen in the mirror. That woman could survive a gala full of sharks. That woman could face down Victor's family and emerge unscathed. The question was whether Lena could become her when it mattered most. The night before the gala, Lena couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs around midnight, seeking the library and its comforting shelves of books. But when she reached the doorway, she found Victor already there, standing by the window with a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, without turning around. "Too many thoughts." Lena moved to stand beside him. "What are you thinking about?" "Tomorrow, my father. The fact that this is the first time in 50 years I've brought a woman to meet him." Victor took a drink. "He's going to see right through us, you know. Giuseppe Moretti didn't build an empire by being fooled easily." "Then we don't try to fool him," Lena said. "We tell him the truth." Victor turned to look at her. "The truth?" "That we have an arrangement, yes, but that we also have respect for each other. That we're building something that works for both of us." Lena met his eyes. "That's not a lie, is it?" "No," Victor said softly. "It's not a lie." They stood together in the darkness, the silence between them comfortable rather than awkward. Finally, Victor spoke again. "I have something for you, for tomorrow night." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. When he opened it, Lena gasped. Inside was a necklace, a single ruby the size of a quail's egg, suspended from a platinum chain so delicate it looked like spider's silk. "Victor, I can't." "It belonged to my mother," Victor interrupted. "My father gave it to her on their wedding day. When she died, it passed to me." He lifted the necklace from its box. "I want you to wear it tomorrow. I want everyone to see that you're not just my wife in name. You're family." Lena turned, sweeping her hair aside so Victor could fasten the clasp. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, and she shivered at the contact. When she turned back to face him, the ruby lay heavy and warm against her skin. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "So are you." Victor's voice was raw with something that sounded dangerously like honesty. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Lena knew that if she stepped closer, if she reached for him, the careful distance they'd maintained would shatter. And part of her wanted it to shatter. Part of her wanted to close the space between them and find out what happened when business arrangements turned into something messier, something real. But before she could move, Victor stepped back. "You should rest," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Tomorrow will be difficult." Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Victor?" "Yes?" "Thank you for the necklace, for everything." "It's only a necklace, Lena." "No," she said quietly. "It's not." She left him standing in the library, and as she climbed the stairs to her room, she touched the ruby at her throat and wondered when this pretend marriage had started feeling so terrifyingly real. The day of the gala arrived with crystalline clarity, blue skies and cool air that promised a perfect evening. Lena spent the morning in a state of controlled anxiety, going over everything Victor had taught her, rehearsing conversations in her head, preparing for every possible scenario. By the time Margot arrived to help her dress, Lena's hands were shaking. "Breathe," Margot commanded, lacing Lena into the crimson gown. "You look like you're going to war, not a party." "Isn't it the same thing?" Lena asked. Margot's laugh was sharp and knowing. "In this family? Absolutely. But wars can be won, Mrs. Moretti, and you're wearing the right armor." The dress fit like it had been painted on. Margot worked her hair into an elegant updo that showcased the dramatic back of the gown, then applied makeup with an artist's precision. Smoky eyes, bold red lips, a touch of shimmer along her cheekbones. The ruby necklace was the final touch, drawing the eye and making a statement that needed no words. When Lena finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. This wasn't the exhausted nurse from Queens. This was someone powerful, someone dangerous, someone who belonged in Victor's world. "Perfect," Margot declared. "Now go show them what you're made of." Victor was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, devastating in a black tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. When he saw Lena descending toward him, he went absolutely still, his expression transforming into something that made her heart stutter. "Lena." Her name was almost a prayer. "You're too much?" she asked nervously. "Perfect," Victor finished, echoing Margot's words. He offered his hand to help her down the last few steps. You're absolutely perfect. His eyes lingered on the necklace at her throat, and something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. When he looked at her again, the carefully controlled businessman had been replaced by something rawer, more real. Are you ready? He asked. No, Lena admitted. But I'm going anyway. Victor's smile was quick and genuine. That's my girl. The words shouldn't have warmed her as much as they did. The gala was held at the Moretti family's crown jewel, a historic hotel in Manhattan that had been in the family for 3 generations. As their car pulled up to the entrance, Lena saw the press lined up behind velvet ropes, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Remember, Victor murmured as the door opened. Chin up, smile small, eyes forward. Don't answer any questions. Just let them look. He stepped out first, then turned to offer Lena his hand. The moment she emerged from the car, the camera flashes intensified, becoming almost blinding. Questions erupted from the press line. Mr. Moretti, who's your companion? Is it true you got married? How did you meet? What's her name? Victor simply smiled and placed his hand on the small of Lena's exposed back, the touch both protective and possessive. They walked the red carpet together, Victor nodding to photographers but never stopping, never engaging. Lena kept her expression serene, her posture perfect, channeling every lesson Victor had taught her. Inside, the hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Flowers in cream and gold decorated every surface. A string quartet played classical music from a raised platform. And everywhere Lena looked, there were people, hundreds of them, all dressed in their finest, all turning to stare as she entered on Victor's arm. Here we go, Victor murmured, guiding her deeper into the crowd. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Business associates, political figures, society matrons. Everyone wanted to meet Victor's mysterious new wife. Lena smiled and nodded and said as little as possible, letting Victor carry most of the conversation while she observed and learned. She was talking to a city councilman about hospital funding when a woman's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. Victor, darling, aren't you going to introduce us to your bride? Lena turned to find herself facing a woman who could only be Valeria Moretti. She was in her late 50s, beautiful in that hard, maintained way that came from excellent surgeons and rigorous discipline. Her dress was designer black, her jewelry was diamonds and ice, and her smile held all the warmth of a shark circling prey. Valeria, Victor said, his voice carefully neutral. This is my wife, Lena. Lena, my sister Valeria, and my brother Adrian. Adrian stood beside his sister, looking smug and predatory in his tuxedo. We meet again, sister-in-law. You clean up nicely? Thank you, Lena said evenly, refusing to take the bait. Valeria's eyes traveled over Lena with surgical precision, cataloging every detail. That's quite a dress. And mother's necklace, I see. How sentimental of you, Victor. I thought it appropriate, Victor replied. Lena is family now. Is she? Valeria's smile sharpened. Tell me, Lena, how exactly did you and my brother meet? He's been so mysterious about the whole thing. This was the test, Lena realized. The first real attack. She felt Victor tense beside her, ready to intervene, but she touched his arm lightly. I've got this. At a restaurant, Lena said smoothly. I was having dinner with a friend. Victor was at the next table. He sent over a bottle of wine, and then he came over to introduce himself. We talked for 3 hours and never noticed the restaurant closing around us. It was a good lie. Simple, believable, romantic enough to be credible. Valeria's eyes narrowed slightly, searching for cracks in the story. How charming. And what do you do, Lena? I'm a nurse. Or I was. I'm finishing my degree now. A nurse. Adrian's tone made it sound like a dirty word. How wonderfully practical. And what does your family think about your whirlwind marriage to a man 50 years your senior? 47 years, Lena corrected, her voice cool. And my mother is delighted that I found someone who treats me with kindness and respect, qualities that seem to be in short supply, even in the best families. Adrian's smile froze. Valeria's eyes flashed with something that might have been respect or might have been rage. "Well," Valeria said, her tone saccharine, "aren't you just full of surprises? I can see why Victor chose you." "I chose him too," Lena said quietly, meeting Valeria's eyes. "That's how marriage works." Before Valeria could respond, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "Enough, Valeria. Stop circling my daughter-in-law like a vulture and bring her to me." The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and Lena saw him. Giuseppe Moretti, Victor's father, the man whose dying wish had set all of this in motion. He was in a wheelchair now, clearly diminished by illness, but his presence was still formidable. He had Victor's dark eyes, though age and sickness had dulled them, and the same sharp cheekbones. Despite his frailty, he radiated the kind of power that came from decades of absolute authority. Victor's hand tightened on Lena's back. "Father, I wasn't sure you'd make it tonight. And miss meeting the woman who finally got you to the altar? Not a chance." Giuseppe's eyes fixed on Lena with laser focus. "Come here, girl. Let me look at you." Lena approached the wheelchair, very aware of the entire ballroom watching this interaction. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her back, waiting to see how she'd handle the family patriarch. "Mr. Moretti," she said, extending her hand, "it's an honor to meet you." Giuseppe took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he turned it over, studying her palm. "A working woman's hands. That's good. I don't trust people who've never worked a day in their lives." He looked up at her face. "You're very young." 23, Lena confirmed. "And very beautiful. But I suspect you already know that." Giuseppe released her hand. "Tell me something, Lena Moretti. Why did you marry my son?" The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Beside her, Victor went rigid. This was it, the moment that would define everything. Lena could lie, could spin some romantic fantasy that Giuseppe would see through in seconds. Or she could tell him the truth and face the consequences. She chose truth. "Because he offered me something I desperately needed, and I could offer him something he desperately wanted in return," Lena said steadily. "We made a deal, Mr. Moretti, a fair one, for both of us." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Valeria's expression turned triumphant. Adrian smirked. Victor's face remained carefully blank, but Lena felt his hand tremble slightly against her back. Giuseppe studied her for a long, terrible moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he laughed. A deep, genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "A deal," he repeated, his eyes sparkling with something that looked like delight. "Finally, someone honest. Do you know how rare that is, girl? In this room, in this family, in this goddamn city?" He looked at Victor. "You chose well, my son. At least she's not trying to lie to me." "Father," Victor started. "No, let her speak." Giuseppe waved him silent. "What kind of deal, Lena?" Lena took a breath, aware that she was walking a tightrope. "The kind where we both get what we need and no one gets hurt. He gets a wife and heir to secure his inheritance. I get a future that doesn't involve watching everyone I love suffer." "And love?" Giuseppe asked, his voice sharp. "Where does love factor into this deal?" Lena met his eyes. "Love was never part of the contract." "But it's becoming part of the marriage," Giuseppe said, and it wasn't a question. "I can see it. The way you stand together, the way he touches you, the way you defend him without even thinking about it. You're falling in love with my son, aren't you, girl?" The accusation hung in the air like a bomb. Lena's heart hammered. She wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, to maintain the pretense of clinical detachment, but she couldn't, because somewhere between the contract signing and this moment, Giuseppe's observation had become truth. Lena started, her voice failing. "She doesn't have to answer that," Victor cut in, his voice hard. "This is between us, Father, not public entertainment." "Everything about this family is public entertainment," Giuseppe shot back. "You know that better than anyone." He turned back to Lena. "My son is not an easy man to love. He's hard, controlled, dangerous when he needs to be. But he's also loyal, honorable, and far more gentle than he wants anyone to know. If you're going to love him, and I think you already do, you need to understand what you're signing up for." "I understand more than you think," Lena said quietly. Giuseppe studied her a moment longer, then nodded. "Good. Then welcome to the family, Lena Moretti." Try not to let these vultures eat you alive. He wheeled away, leaving Lena and Victor standing in the middle of the ballroom with everyone staring. Valeria's expression had gone from triumphant to confused. Adrian looked like he'd just watched his entire strategy collapse. Victor leaned down to murmur in Lena's ear. That was either brilliant or suicidal. I haven't decided which. Maybe both, Lena murmured back. Before they could say more, music started. A waltz, slow and elegant. Couples began moving toward the dance floor. Victor offered Lena his hand. Dance with me? Lena let him lead her onto the floor, very aware that every eye in the room was still watching them. Victor pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other clasping her hand against his chest. You told my father the truth, he said as they began to move. Was that wrong? I don't know yet. Victor guided her through the steps with practiced ease. But it was brave. Stupid, maybe, but brave. He would have seen through a lie. Probably. Victor's hand tightened on her waist. And what he said about you falling in love with me. Don't, Lena interrupted. Please, not here. Then where? Victor asked, his voice rough. Because we need to talk about what's happening between us, Lena. This stopped being just a contract weeks ago. I know. Lena met his eyes, seeing her own confusion reflected back. But I don't know what it is now, and I'm terrified of finding out. So am I, Victor admitted. But that doesn't make it less real. They danced in silence for a while, lost in each other despite the hundreds of people surrounding them. Lena let herself relax into Victor's arms, let herself feel the warmth of his body against hers, let herself imagine for just a moment that this was real, that they were really married, really in love, really building a future together. Then Valeria cut in. May I? She asked, though it wasn't really a question. Victor tensed, but he stepped back, relinquishing Lena to his sister with obvious reluctance. Don't wander far, he told Lena. I'll be right over there. He moved to the edge of the dance floor, watching them like a hawk. Valeria took Lena's hand and waist with cool precision, leading them through the waltz with mechanical perfection. That was quite a performance with father, Valeria said, her voice pitched low enough that only Lena could hear. Admitting it's a business arrangement, bold strategy. It's not a strategy, Lena said. It's the truth. Is it? Valeria's smile was razor sharp. Because from where I'm standing, you look like a woman who's in way over her head, playing house with a man who could crush you without even trying. Victor wouldn't hurt me. Not physically, maybe. But there are other ways to destroy someone, Lena. And my brother, despite his gentle facade tonight, has destroyed plenty of people over the years. Valeria's grip tightened slightly. I've done my research on you, your mother's gambling debts, your struggling career, your desperation. Victor exploited that desperation, and you let him. We helped each other, Lena corrected, refusing to let Valeria see her fear. That's not exploitation, that's partnership. Call it whatever you want. But understand this. When Victor gets what he needs from you, when you've provided the heir he's after, you'll be disposable. Men like my brother don't marry for love. They marry for advantage. And once that advantage is secured, Valeria let the threat hang. You don't know your brother as well as you think, Lena said. And you know him after a few weeks? How naive. Valeria leaned closer. I'm going to enjoy watching you fall, Lena. It's going to be spectacular. The music ended. Valeria released her and walked away without another word, leaving Lena standing alone on the dance floor. She felt like she'd been physically struck, Valeria's words echoing in her mind. When Victor gets what he needs from you, you'll be disposable. Was that true? Was she just a temporary solution to Victor's inheritance problem, destined to be discarded once she'd served her purpose? Victor appeared at her elbow, his expression dark. What did she say to you? Nothing important, Lena lied. Lena, I need some air, she interrupted. Please, just give me a minute. She fled before Victor could stop her, making her way through the crowd toward the terrace doors. Outside, the cool night air hit her like a slap, clearing some of the fog from her mind. She gripped the stone balustrade, trying to slow her racing heart, trying to quiet the voice in her head that said Valeria was right. Running away already? Lena spun to find Adrian stepping out of the shadows, a champagne glass in his hand and trouble in his eyes. I needed air, she said. I'm not running. Sure you're not. Adrian moved closer, and Lena caught the scent of expensive cologne and too much alcohol. You know, you impressed me tonight, standing up to Valeria, winning over father. That takes guts. Thank you, Lena said carefully, looking for an escape route. But you're still going to fail, Adrian continued, his words slightly slurred. Victor might believe his own delusion about building a real marriage, but we both know better. This is a transaction. And when transactions are complete, people move on. Like I told your sister, you don't know Victor as well as you think. I've known him for 50 years, sweetheart. How long have you known him? A month? 6 weeks? Adrian laughed. You're a beautiful distraction, Lena. Nothing more. And when you're no longer useful, Victor will find another distraction. He reached out to touch her face. Lena jerked back, but her retreat was blocked by the balustrade. Don't touch me, she said, her voice sharp. Or what? Adrian's smile turned predatory. You'll tell Victor? He's busy inside, playing the dutiful son. No one's going to save you out here, little nurse. I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving eventually. Adrian's hand landed on her waist, fingers digging in. Question is, who's going to save you when Victor gets bored? I am. The voice came from the terrace doorway, cold, lethal, and absolutely furious. Victor stood there, his expression transformed into something that made even Adrian take a step back. Victor, Adrian said, trying for casual and failing, I was just touching my wife without her consent, Victor finished, crossing the terrace in 3 strides, which is the last mistake you're going to make tonight. He grabbed Adrian by the collar and slammed him against the wall with shocking violence. Adrian's champagne glass shattered on the stone. Victor, wait. Shut up. Victor's voice was deadly quiet. You're going to apologize to Lena, and then you're going to leave this gala and never come near her again. Do you understand me? She's not worth this, Adrian gasped. She's just a... Victor's fist connected with Adrian's jaw with a sickening crack. Adrian crumpled to the ground, blood streaming from his split lip. Victor! Lena grabbed his arm before he could hit Adrian again. Stop, please! Victor looked at her, his chest heaving, his knuckles bloody. For a moment she saw the man his reputation promised. Dangerous, violent, capable of terrible things. Then his expression softened, and he was Victor again. Her Victor, the man who'd taught her to dance and given her his mother's necklace. Did he hurt you? Victor asked, his voice hoarse. No, you stopped him. Lena touched his face. I'm okay. Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Over his shoulder, Lena saw security guards rushing onto the terrace, summoned by the commotion. They hauled Adrian to his feet and dragged him inside, leaving Lena and Victor alone in the darkness. I'm sorry, Victor murmured against her hair. I should have been watching him. I should have known he'd try something. You can't protect me from everything, Lena said. I can damn well try. Victor pulled back enough to look at her. What did he say to you? Lena hesitated, then decided on honesty. That I'm a distraction. That you'll get bored and move on once I've given you what you need. Victor's jaw tightened. And you believed him? I don't know what to believe anymore, Lena's voice broke. This was supposed to be simple. A contract, a deal, nothing complicated. But now it's all tangled up and I don't know where the pretending stops and the reality starts. I'll tell you where it stops, Victor said fiercely. It stops the moment you walked into my life and made me remember what it feels like to want something for myself instead of for the family, for the business, for the goddamn empire. His hands framed her face. You're not a distraction, Lena. You're the most real thing that's happened to me in 50 years. Victor, I'm falling in love with you, he interrupted. My father saw it before I admitted it to myself. And I know that wasn't part of the contract. I know it complicates everything, but I can't pretend anymore that this is just business. Lena's breath caught. The words she'd been afraid to hear, afraid to hope for, hung between them like a benediction. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, and it terrifies me. Me too. Victor's laugh was shaky. I'm 70 years old, Lena. I thought I was past feeling like this, past wanting someone so badly it hurt, past hoping for something more than duty and obligation. But here you are, making me feel like I'm 20 again and stupid with it. Lena kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact, her fear, her hope, her desperate, terrifying love. Victor kissed her back like she was air, and he was drowning, his hands tangling in her hair, the civilized veneer he always wore cracking to reveal something raw and real beneath. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the world had shifted on its axis. "We should go back inside," Victor said reluctantly, "before they send a search party." "Or we could leave," Lena suggested. "Go home. Let them think whatever they want." Victor smiled, the expression transforming his face. "I like the way you think, Mrs. Moretti." They slipped away from the gala like thieves, leaving behind the questions and the stares and the family that wanted to tear them apart. In the car, Victor pulled Lena close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling something settle in her chest, something that felt dangerously like happiness. "That went better than expected," Victor said dryly. Lena laughed. "You punched your brother, and we admitted we're falling in love on a terrace. That's your definition of better than expected?" "We survived," Victor pointed out. "And my father approves of you. That's a minor miracle." "Valeria doesn't." "If Valeria doesn't approve of anyone," Victor's arm tightened around her. "She's dangerous, Lena. More dangerous than Adrian. We need to be careful." "I know." Lena looked up at him. "But I'm not afraid of her. Not anymore." "Why not?" "Because I'm not alone." Lena touched his face, feeling the roughness of stubble beneath her palm. "I have you, and apparently, I have your father's blessing. That's more than I had this morning." Victor kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "You have more than that. You have me. All of me. For as long as you want me." "Forever might not be long enough," Lena whispered. "Then we'll figure out a way to make forever last longer." They drove through the night toward home, toward a future neither of them had planned but both of them wanted with desperate intensity. The contract that had brought them together was still there, still binding, still complicated. But beneath it, something else was growing, something real and terrifying and worth fighting for. Behind them, the gala continued without them. Valeria and Adrian licked their wounds and plotted revenge. Giuseppe watched from his wheelchair and smiled, knowing exactly what he'd set in motion. And ahead of them, in the darkness, lay challenges they couldn't yet see. Threats that would test everything they'd built, enemies that would stop at nothing to tear them apart, and a love that would have to prove itself stronger than every obstacle in its path. But for now, in the quiet of the car, with Lena in his arms and hope blooming in his chest, Victor allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could survive anything, as long as they survived it together. The morning after the gala, Lena woke to find Victor's side of the bed empty. Not his bed, technically. They still maintained separate rooms, separate spaces, the careful fiction that this marriage was anything but real. Except last night, after they'd returned from the gala, Victor had walked her to her door, and she'd pulled him inside, unwilling to let the night end, unwilling to go back to the loneliness of sleeping alone. They'd fallen asleep tangled together, still in their formal clothes, too exhausted and emotionally wrung out to do anything but hold each other. And for the first time since this whole arrangement began, Lena had slept peacefully, dreamlessly, safe. Now she sat up, finding a note on the pillow where Victor's head had been. "Had to handle something. Stay inside today. Please." The please was underlined twice, which told Lena everything she needed to know about how serious the threat was. She was still staring at the note when her phone rang. Her mother's number. "Mom, everything okay?" "Lena, sweetheart, there are men outside my house." Her mother's voice was tight with fear. "They've been there since early this morning. They're just sitting in a car, watching. Should I call the police?" Lena's blood turned to ice. "Don't call anyone. I'm sending someone to you right now. Pack a bag, enough for a few days. You're coming to stay with me." "Lena, what's going on? Does this have something to do with Victor?" "I'll explain everything when you get here. Just pack." "Please, Mom." Lena hung up and immediately called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Moretti, I was just about to call you. There are men watching my mother's house. I need you to get her out of there, now." "Already on it. I have a team en route." Marcus's voice was grim. Mr. Moretti anticipated this move. He's handling the other end. "What other end?" "Marcus, what's happening?" "Valeria's making her play. She's been gathering evidence, building a case to have your marriage annulled on the grounds of fraud. The men watching your mother are private investigators trying to find proof that you and Mr. Moretti's relationship is fabricated. Lena sat down heavily on the bed. Can she do that? Annul the marriage? If she can prove coercion, deception, or that the marriage was entered into solely for financial gain with no intent to actually be married, yes. It's a long shot, but Valeria's got expensive lawyers and she's desperate. Marcus paused. Your mother will be safe, I promise. But you need to stay put until Mr. Moretti returns. Where is he? Dealing with Valeria, directly. The call ended, leaving Lena alone with her racing thoughts and growing dread. She paced her room, still wearing last night's dress, feeling like a prisoner in her own home despite the luxury surrounding her. An hour later, Mrs. Chen knocked softly. Mrs. Moretti, your mother has arrived. Lena ran downstairs to find her mother in the foyer, clutching a hastily packed suitcase and looking utterly overwhelmed. The moment she saw Lena, she burst into tears. Sweetheart, what's happening? Those men, and then these security people showed up and rushed me into a car, and I don't understand. Lena pulled her mother into her arms. It's okay. You're safe. That's what matters. But why do I need to be safe, Lena? You're scaring me. Over tea in the sunroom, Lena told her mother an edited version of the truth, that Victor's family disapproved of their marriage, that there were business complications, that some people were trying to cause trouble. She left out the contract, the deal, the fact that their entire relationship had started as a transaction. Her mother listened with growing horror. I knew something was wrong. The way that woman, Valeria, came to the hospital asking questions. She was trying to find dirt on you, wasn't she? Yes, Lena admitted. She wants to prove our marriage is fake so Victor loses his inheritance. But it's not fake, is it? Her mother searched Lena's face. I saw you two together at the wedding. The way he looks at you, that's not pretend. Lena's throat tightened. No, it's not pretend, not anymore. Then we fight, her mother said fiercely. These rich people think they can push around anyone they want, but they're not pushing around my daughter. Despite everything, Lena smiled. Mom, no. I raised you to be strong, to stand up for yourself, so that's what we're going to do. Her mother squeezed Lena's hand. Whatever you need from me, I'm here. They were still sitting together when Victor returned, his expression thunderous. He stopped short when he saw Lena's mother. Mrs. Zhao, I apologize for the dramatic extraction. I hope my team wasn't too frightening. Lena's mother stood, drawing herself up to her full 5 feet 3 inches. Mr. Moretti, we need to talk. Victor glanced at Lena, who shrugged. Her mother marched into the study, clearly expecting Victor to follow. He did, with Lena close behind. I don't know what kind of trouble your family is causing, her mother began without preamble, but I want you to know that my daughter married you in good faith. Whatever arrangement you two had initially, she's committed now, and so help me. If you hurt her or let your family hurt her, I will make the rest of your life very difficult. Victor's expression softened. I have no intention of hurting Lena. Quite the opposite. Good, because she loves you. Her mother crossed her arms. I can see it in her eyes when she talks about you. And if you don't love her back, then you're a fool. Mom, Lena started, mortified. I do love her, Victor interrupted quietly. More than I thought possible at my age. And I will protect her from my family, from anyone who tries to harm her. You have my word. Lena's mother studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, then tell me what we're up against. Victor laid out the situation with brutal honesty. Valeria's investigation, the threats against the marriage's validity, the legal maneuvering designed to disqualify Victor from inheriting. He showed them documents, evidence of Valeria's campaign, the private investigators she'd hired. She's building a narrative, Victor explained, that I coerced Lena into marriage, that we never intended to actually be married, that the whole thing is a sham to secure my inheritance. How do we fight it? Lena asked. By being exactly what we are, a real married couple. Victor looked between Lena and her mother, which means no more separate bedrooms, no more careful distance. We need to live like we're actually in love. We are actually in love, Lena pointed out. Yes, but we've been hiding it, maintaining the fiction that this was just business. Victor moved closer to Lena. That needs to end, starting now. Before Lena could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. Sir, we have a situation. There's been a break-in at the downtown office. Files were stolen, including the prenuptial agreement and marriage contract. Victor's face went white. When? Sometime last night during the gala. Very professional job. Nothing else was taken, just those specific documents. Valeria, Lena breathed. Almost certainly. Victor was already moving toward his office. Those contracts contain language that could be interpreted as transactional if taken out of context. In the wrong hands, she'll use them to prove the marriage is fraudulent, Lena finished. Victor turned to Marcus. Get our lawyers on this. I want to know what our legal exposure is and how quickly we can mitigate it. After Marcus left, Lena's mother spoke up. I don't understand. Why does a prenuptial agreement matter if you two are really married? Because it's not a standard prenuptial, Victor admitted. It's detailed about expectations, compensation, the timeline for producing an heir. A hostile lawyer could make it look very damning. Then we need proof that you're really together, her mother said practically. Not just legal documents, real proof. Photos, witnesses, evidence of a genuine relationship. We have that, Lena said. The gala last night, hundreds of people saw us together. Saw you at an event, her mother corrected. That's not the same as seeing you live as a married couple. You need people to see you in normal, everyday situations. Shopping for groceries, going to dinner, visiting friends. Being boring and domestic and ordinary. Victor and Lena looked at each other. It was actually a good plan. Your mother's right, Victor said slowly. We've been hiding in this house, keeping our distance from the world. That needs to change. So we go public, Lena said, really public. Not just formal events, but regular life. It's risky, Victor warned. The more we're out there, the more opportunities Valeria has to cause problems. She's already causing problems, Lena pointed out. At least this way we control the narrative. They spent the rest of the day planning their strategy. Victor's PR team was brought in, along with his lawyers, and together they mapped out a campaign to establish the Morettis as a genuine, loving couple. Carefully staged but authentic moments. Dinner at Victor's favorite restaurant, shopping in Soho, attending a Broadway show, visiting Lena's mother. Everything documented, everything designed to paint a picture of a real marriage. It feels manipulative, Tita, Lena said that evening, as she and Victor reviewed the schedule. It is manipulative, Victor agreed. But it's also true. We are a real couple. We're just making sure everyone knows it. And if Valeria still challenges the marriage, then we have our father's support, public opinion on our side, and documented evidence of a genuine relationship. Victor pulled Lena close. She can try to tear us apart, but she'll fail. You sound very confident. That's because I am. Valeria is smart, but she's also predictable. She thinks we're weak because our marriage started as a transaction. She doesn't understand that what we've built is stronger than any traditional arrangement. Victor touched Lena's face. She doesn't understand that I would burn down my entire empire before I let anyone take you from me. The intensity in his voice made Lena shiver. Victor, I mean it. His thumb traced her lower lip. Everything I've done, everything I've built, it means nothing compared to you. If I have to choose between my inheritance and our marriage, there's no contest. Your father's dying, Lena said gently. The business, the inheritance, it matters. Not just for you, but for all the people who depend on the Moretti Empire. Then we make sure I don't have to choose. Victor kissed her, slow and thorough. We beat Valeria at her own game. The next 2 weeks became a carefully choreographed performance of domesticity. Lena and Victor were photographed leaving art galleries, holding hands at farmers' markets, sharing gelato in Little Italy. They gave a carefully curated interview to a lifestyle magazine about their whirlwind romance. They hosted a dinner party for business associates where Lena played the gracious hostess with Victor at her side, clearly besotted. And somewhere in the middle of all the staging and performing, it stopped feeling like pretend. Victor moved into Lena's bedroom, or rather, they moved into the master suite together, combining their separate spaces into one shared life. Lena woke up next to him every morning and fell asleep in his arms every night. They established routines, inside jokes, the small intimacies that defined real couples. This is nice, Lena said one morning as they had breakfast on the terrace. Playing house. We're not playing, Victor corrected. looking up from his newspaper. This is our life now. Is it? Lena studied him. Or is it just another performance for Valeria's benefit? Victor set down the paper. Do you really think I'm pretending when I hold you at night? When I kiss you good morning? When I can't concentrate in meetings because I'm thinking about coming home to you? No, Lena admitted. But I also know we started this whole thing as a lie. How do we know where the lie ends and the truth begins? Does it matter? Victor reached across the table to take her hand. What we have now is real. That's all I care about. But Lena couldn't shake the feeling that they were building their life on a foundation of sand, and any moment the tide could come in and wash it all away. Her fears proved prescient 2 days later when Valeria made her move. Lena was at the hospital visiting her mother, who'd insisted on going back for a routine checkup, when her phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, news alerts, all variations on the same devastating theme. Valeria had leaked the contracts. Not just leaked them, she'd given them to every major news outlet in New York, along with a detailed narrative about how Victor had essentially purchased a wife and womb to secure his inheritance. The story was everywhere. Photos of the contracts, analysis by legal experts, think pieces about wealthy men exploiting desperate young women. Lena's phone rang. Victor. I'm so sorry, he said immediately. I'm handling it, I swear. My lawyers are already working on damage control. Victor, they're calling me a prostitute, Lena interrupted, her voice shaking. That's the actual headline. Mafia boss pays nurse to produce Heir. They're saying I sold myself. They're wrong. What we have is real. But it didn't start that way. Lena's voice cracked. Everything they're saying about the contract is true. You did pay me. We did have a timeline for producing a child. I did marry you to erase my mother's debt. Lena, where are you? The hospital, with my mother. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. No. Lena watched as reporters started gathering in the hospital lobby, clearly tipped off to her location. There are press everywhere. If you come here, it'll just make it worse. I don't care about the press. I do. Lena ducked into a supply closet as a reporter rounded the corner. Victor, this is bad. This is really bad. Your father is going to see those contracts. The court is going to see them. How do we explain this? With the truth, Victor said firmly. Yes, we had a contract. Yes, it started as a business arrangement. But what we have now is real. We're a real married couple who fell in love despite how we started. Will that be enough? It has to be. But Victor's confidence felt hollow in the face of the media firestorm. By that evening, the story had gone national. Cable news pundits debated whether the arrangement was legal. Social media exploded with hot takes. Someone even started a hashtag demanding Victor's arrest for human trafficking, despite the fact that every legal expert agreed the contracts were technically legal. Marcus smuggled Lena and her mother out of the hospital through a service entrance and back to the estate. The gates were surrounded by reporters and photographers, making the house feel more like a fortress than a home. Inside, Victor was in his study with a team of lawyers, strategizing. He looked up when Lena entered, his expression transforming from hard determination to open relief. Thank God. Are you all right? No, Lena said honestly, but I'm here. He pulled her into his arms, not caring that half a dozen lawyers were watching. I'm going to fix this. How? The whole world knows we started as a transaction. Your family knows. The courts know. Lena pulled back to look at him. Victor, maybe we should just admit defeat. Let Valeria win. At least then this nightmare ends. Absolutely not. Victor's voice was steel. I don't care what the world thinks they know. I'm not giving up on us. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Moretti, we need to discuss your options. Given the contracts that have been made public, the contracts are irrelevant, Victor interrupted. They document how our marriage began, not what it's become. The court may not see it that way, the lawyer said gently. There's precedent for annulling marriages that were entered into under fraudulent pretenses. There was no fraud, Lena said sharply. We were both honest about what we wanted. We both entered the agreement with full knowledge and consent. Mrs. Moretti, I understand, but no, I don't think you do. Lena moved to stand beside Victor. Yes, we had a contract. Yes, there was compensation involved. But we also had respect, honesty, and clear terms. No one was coerced. No one was deceived. We made a deal, and then we fell in love. That's not fraud. That's just life. The lawyers exchanged glances. Finally, the senior attorney spoke. If you're willing to testify to that under oath, we might be able to build a case. Convince the court that while the marriage began unconventionally, it's now a genuine partnership. I'm willing, Lena said immediately. So am I, Victor added. Then we'll need to move quickly. Valeria's already filed a petition with the probate court challenging your standing as a legitimate heir. The lawyer shuffled papers. There will be a hearing in 10 days. Both of you will need to testify. After the lawyers left, Lena and Victor stood alone in the study. The weight of the coming battle pressed down on both of them. I'm sorry, Victor said quietly. I brought you into this mess. My family, my inheritance problems, none of this should be your burden. We're married, Lena reminded him. Your burdens are my burdens now. That's how this works. Even when the marriage started as a contract? Especially then. Lena took his hand. We chose this, Victor. Both of us. And I choose it again, right now. Contracts and scandals and reporters and all. Victor pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I love you. I need you to know that. Whatever happens in that courtroom, whatever my family tries to do, I love you. I love you too. Lena held him tighter. And we're going to get through this. But even as she said it, Lena wondered if love would be enough to survive what was coming. The next 10 days were brutal. The media camped outside the estate, documenting every movement. Lena's friends from nursing school reached out, some supportive, some judging, most just curious. Her mother stood by her fiercely, giving one memorable interview where she told a reporter that her daughter's love life was none of their damn business. Giuseppe Moretti, surprisingly, issued his own statement supporting Victor and Lena's marriage. It was brief, but powerful. My son has made many choices in his life. This marriage is one of the few I'm genuinely proud of. Anyone who knows Victor and Lena can see they belong together. The how matters less than the what is. But Valeria wasn't backing down. She produced witnesses, people who claimed to have overheard conversations between Victor and his lawyers about procuring a wife. She had financial records showing the exact amount paid to erase Lena's mother's debts. She even had recordings of phone calls between Victor and his accountant discussing the investment in his marriage. She's been planning this for months, Victor said grimly as they reviewed the evidence with their legal team. Everything I said, everyone I talked to, she was listening. Then we need to be smarter than her, Lena said. The night before the hearing, neither of them could sleep. They lay in bed, tangled together, trying to memorize the feeling of peace before the storm. What if we lose? Lena whispered. We won't. But if we do? If the court annuls the marriage? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then I lose my inheritance. Adrian or Valeria takes over the business. And I spend the rest of my life with you anyway, because I'm not letting you go regardless of what some judge says. You'd really give up everything for me? In a heartbeat. Victor turned to face her. I spent 70 years building an empire I didn't really want, following a path that was chosen for me. You're the first thing I've chosen for myself in decades. No inheritance is worth more than that. Lena kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and fear and desperate hope into the contact. They made love slowly, tenderly, like it might be the last time, both of them trying to burn the memory into their bones. Afterward, lying in the darkness, Lena made a decision. Tomorrow, she said, when we go into that courtroom, I'm going to tell them everything. The whole truth, nothing held back. Lena, no, listen. Valeria's whole case is built on the idea that we're hiding something, that our marriage is a sham we're desperately trying to cover up. So we stop hiding, we tell them exactly how this started, why we made the deal we did, and what it's become. That could backfire spectacularly, Victor warned, or it could be the thing that saves us. Lena propped herself up on one elbow. We have nothing to be ashamed of. We were two desperate people who found a way to help each other. That's not fraud. That's not exploitation. That's just two people trying to survive. Victor studied her face in the dim light filtering through the curtains. You're remarkable. Do you know that? I'm terrified, Lena corrected. You can be both. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for a few precious hours they forgot about courtrooms and contracts and families who wanted to destroy them. But morning came anyway, bringing with it the reckoning they could no longer avoid. The courthouse was surrounded by media, protesters, and curious onlookers. Signs declaring everything from marriage is sacred to sex work is real work competed for attention. Lena and Victor made their way through the crowd with Marcus and his security team clearing a path. Inside the courtroom, Valeria sat with her lawyers, looking confident and perfectly composed. Adrian was there too, smirking as Victor and Lena took their seats. But on their side of the aisle, Giuseppe sat in his wheelchair, flanked by business associates, employees, and people whose loyalty to Victor ran deeper than blood. The hearing began with Valeria's lawyers laying out their case. They presented the contracts, the financial records, testimony from people who'd overheard conversations about the arrangement. They painted a picture of Victor as a desperate man buying a wife like one might buy a car, and Lena as a young woman selling herself for money. The evidence is clear, Valeria's lead attorney concluded. This marriage was entered into with the sole purpose of satisfying the terms of Giuseppe Moretti's will. There was no genuine intent to create a marital relationship. Therefore, the court should annul the marriage and disqualify Victor Moretti from inheriting. Then it was their turn. Victor testified first, laying out the facts with brutal honesty. Yes, he'd offered Lena a contract. Yes, there had been financial compensation. Yes, the goal had been to produce an heir before his father died. But what began as a business arrangement became something neither of us expected, Victor said, looking directly at the judge. I fell in love with my wife, not because I had to, not because the contract required it, but because she's extraordinary, and being with her makes me want to be a better man than I've been. When it was Lena's turn, she took the stand with her heart hammering but her head high. I want to be very clear about something, she began. I married Victor Moretti to save my mother's life. That's the truth. She had gambling debts she couldn't pay, and men were going to hurt her if I didn't find a way to settle them. Victor offered me a solution. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't conventional, but it was honest. Valeria's lawyer stood. So you admit you married solely for financial gain? No, Lena said firmly. I married to save someone I love. The financial aspect was part of the arrangement, yes, but the marriage, the real marriage, that came later. How convenient, the lawyer sneered. It's not convenient at all, Lena shot back. It's messy and complicated and nothing like what either of us planned. But it's real. Victor is my husband. I am his wife. We love each other, and I don't care how it started. What matters is what it's become. She looked at Victor across the courtroom. He gave her a small nod, his eyes shining with pride and love. I've made a lot of choices in my life that I'm not proud of, Lena continued, but marrying Victor Moretti isn't one of them. Yes, we had a contract. Yes, there were terms and conditions and financial considerations, but we also had respect, honesty, and a genuine desire to help each other. Is that really so different from traditional marriages where people consider financial stability, family approval, and practical concerns before saying I do? The courtroom was silent. Even Valeria's lawyer seemed momentarily speechless. The only difference between our marriage and countless others, Lena said quietly, is that we were honest enough to write down what most couples just think but never say. We put our hopes and fears and expectations in a contract instead of pretending they didn't exist. And then, despite all our careful planning, we fell in love anyway. If that's not the definition of a real marriage, the messy, unpredictable, beautiful collision of two lives, then I don't know what is. She stepped down from the witness stand and returned to her seat. Victor reached for her hand under the table, squeezing tight. The judge called for a brief recess. Lena and Victor huddled with their lawyers while Valeria conferred with hers across the aisle. That was quite a speech, their attorney said. Whether it's enough. It was the truth, Lena said simply. That has to count for something. When court resumed, the judge looked thoughtful. I've reviewed the contracts in question along with the testimony provided today. This is indeed an unusual case. However, unusual is not the same as illegal or fraudulent. Valeria's face tightened. The prenuptial agreement and marriage contract, while unconventional, appear to have been entered into by two consenting adults with full knowledge of the terms. There's no evidence of coercion, deception, or undue influence. What I see is two people who made a practical arrangement that evolved into something more. Victor's hand tightened on Lena's. Mrs. Moretti's testimony was particularly illuminating, the judge continued. Her point about written versus unwritten expectations in marriage is well taken. Many marriages begin with practical considerations. The fact that this couple was honest enough to formalize those considerations doesn't make their subsequent relationship less valid. Your Honor, Valeria's lawyer tried to interrupt. I'm not finished. The judge's tone was sharp. I'm also swayed by the testimony of Giuseppe Moretti, who supports this union despite being the person whose will is in question. His statement suggests he believes his son's marriage is genuine, which carries significant weight. Lena barely dared to breathe. Therefore, this court finds no grounds to annul the marriage of Victor and Lena Moretti. The marriage stands. The petition is denied. The gavel came down, and for a moment, Lena couldn't process what she'd heard. Then Victor pulled her into his arms, and she realized they'd won. They'd actually won. Behind them, Giuseppe was applauding, his weathered face split in a genuine smile. Around the courtroom, supporters joined in. Valeria sat frozen, her expression murderous, while Adrian had already stormed out. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. This time Victor and Lena stopped. We have a brief statement, Victor said, his arm around Lena. Our marriage began unconventionally, that's true. But what it's become is real, powerful, and ours. We're grateful the court recognized that love doesn't always follow a predictable path. And we hope our story reminds people that honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, is the foundation of any lasting relationship. Lena added, We're not perfect, our story isn't perfect, but it's ours, and it's real, and we're proud of it. They made their way to the car through the crowd, but this time the questions felt less hostile, more curious. By the time they got home, social media was already turning in their favor. People who'd condemned them days before were now calling them brave, honest, revolutionary. Public opinion is fickle, Victor observed as they watched the news coverage. But the court's opinion isn't, Lena pointed out. We won, Victor. We actually won. We did. He pulled her close. Though you did most of the heavy lifting with that testimony, I just told the truth. That's what made it so powerful. They celebrated that night with Giuseppe, who'd insisted on coming to the house despite his failing health. Over champagne and Elena's best cooking, the old man toasted his son and daughter-in-law. You remind me of your mother, he told Victor. She would have liked Lena very much, both of them too stubborn to take the easy path. Thank you, Father, Victor said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Now comes the hard part. Actually running the business together, building a life, maybe giving me a grandson before I die. Giuseppe's eyes twinkled. No pressure. Lena laughed, surprised by how comfortable she felt in this moment. She'd been so afraid of Victor's father, of his judgment, of failing to measure up to some impossible standard. But Giuseppe wasn't judging her. He was welcoming her, accepting her, seeing her as family. After he left, Lena and Victor stood on the terrace, looking out over the gardens they'd walked through so many times over the past months. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Lena admitted, for something else to go wrong. Valeria's not done, Victor warned. She'll regroup, find another angle. Adrian, too. But we'll face it together. Always. Victor turned her to face him. I know this wasn't the marriage you imagined when you were young. The white dress, the church wedding, the Prince Charming who swept you off your feet. No, Lena agreed. It was better. Because it was real from the start, even when we were pretending it wasn't. And because I didn't need a prince. I needed a partner. Someone who saw me as an equal, who respected my strength, who wasn't afraid of my sharp edges. Your sharp edges are my favorite part, Victor said with a smile. Good, because they're not going anywhere. They kissed under the stars and Lena felt something settle in her chest. The certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The contract that had brought them together was meaningless now. What mattered was the commitment they'd chosen, the love they'd built, the future they were creating one complicated, beautiful day at a time. Inside the house, her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. So proud of you, sweetheart. Your father would be too. Lena smiled, leaning into Victor's warmth. And for the first time since this whole impossible journey began, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. The victory in court should have been the end of it, but Lena had lived in Victor's world long enough to know that wars were rarely won with a single battle. Valeria's silence over the following weeks felt more ominous than her attacks had been. No leaked documents, no media campaigns, no legal maneuvers, just quiet. and quiet from Valeria Moretti was never a good sign. "She's planning something," Victor said one morning over breakfast, scrolling through reports from his security team. "She's meeting with offshore investors, liquidating some of her assets. Marcus thinks she's preparing to make a move on the business directly." "Can she do that?" Lena asked, setting down her coffee. "If she gets enough board members on her side, she can call for a vote of no confidence, force me out as CEO, even if I do inherit." Victor's jaw tightened. "She's been talking to the old guard, the men who worked with my grandfather. They're not comfortable with change, and I've been pushing for legitimate business operations. Valeria's promising them a return to the old ways. The profitable, illegal ways," Lena said. "Exactly." Victor closed his laptop. "We won the legal battle. Now we're fighting a political one." But before they could strategize further, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her usually composed face tight with concern. "Mr. Moretti, your father's caretaker just called. He's asking for you both. Immediately." They found Giuseppe in his bedroom, looking frailer than Lena had ever seen him. The past months had taken their toll. His skin was paper-thin, his breathing labored, but his eyes were still sharp when they landed on Victor and Lena. "Sit," he ordered, gesturing to chairs that had been placed beside his bed. "Both of you. We need to talk while I still have the strength." Victor took his father's hand. "Father, you should rest. I'll have plenty of time to rest when I'm dead." Giuseppe's laugh turned into a cough. When he recovered, he looked at Lena. "How are you feeling, daughter? You look pale." Lena had been feeling off for days, exhausted, nauseous, her emotions swinging wildly. She'd attributed it to stress from the court case and its aftermath. "I'm fine, just tired." Giuseppe's eyes narrowed. "When was your last cycle?" The question was so direct, so unexpected that Lena blinked. I don't answer the question." Lena tried to remember, counting back weeks in her head. When she realized how long it had been, her heart stopped. 6 weeks, maybe 7. "Have you taken a test?" Giuseppe asked. "No, I just thought—" Lena looked at Victor, seeing her own shock reflected in his face. "It's probably just stress. The court case, everything with Valeria." "Or you're pregnant," Giuseppe interrupted, "which would explain the fatigue, the nausea, and the fact that you've been avoiding coffee for the past week." Lena realized he was right. She'd been unconsciously pushing away her morning coffee, the smell making her stomach turn. Other symptoms clicked into place: the tenderness in her breasts, the dizziness when she stood too quickly, the overwhelming need for sleep. "I'll send for a doctor," Victor said, already reaching for his phone. "No need." Giuseppe gestured to his nightstand where a pregnancy test sat, still in its box. "I had my nurse pick one up. Call it an old man's intuition." Lena took the box with shaking hands. "You want me to take this now?" "I'm dying, child. I don't have time for suspense." Giuseppe's tone was gentle despite the words. "Go. We'll wait." The bathroom attached to Giuseppe's suite felt surreal as Lena unwrapped the test with trembling fingers. She'd thought about this moment, dreamed about it, feared it, ever since signing the contract. The whole point of her marriage to Victor had been to produce an heir. But somewhere along the way, the clinical goal had been replaced by something more complex. If she was pregnant, it wasn't because a contract required it. It was because she and Victor had fallen in love, had built a real marriage, had chosen each other over and over again. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. When Lena finally looked at the test, 2 pink lines stared back at her, clear and unmistakable. Pregnant. She walked back into the bedroom on unsteady legs, holding the test like it might explode. Victor stood the moment he saw her face. "Lena?" She couldn't speak. She just held out the test. Victor took it, stared at it, then looked at her with an expression of such raw, overwhelming joy that Lena's eyes filled with tears. "We're having a baby," he whispered. "We're having a baby," Lena confirmed, and suddenly she was laughing and crying at the same time, and Victor was pulling her into his arms, and Giuseppe was applauding from his bed. "Finally," the old man said, his voice thick with emotion. "A great-grandchild. I was beginning to think I'd die before seeing this day." Victor moved to his father's bedside, still holding Lena's hand. "Thank you, Father, for everything. For pushing me toward this marriage, for supporting us when everyone else tried to tear us apart, Stop, Giuseppe interrupted. I'm not taking credit for your happiness. That's all you two. I just gave you the push you needed. He reached out to touch Lena's stomach with a trembling hand. Take care of this child. Raise him or her to be better than we were. Teach them that power means nothing if you don't use it to protect the people you love. We will, Lena promised. Giuseppe smiled, then closed his eyes. Good. Now leave me. I need to rest, and you two have celebrating to do. But as they reached the door, he called out once more. Victor, the business, it's yours. Always has been. Don't let Valeria or anyone else take it from you, but don't let it consume you either. You have something more important now. I know, Father, Victor said quietly. I know. They drove home in stunned silence, the reality of the pregnancy settling over them like snow. When they finally reached the estate, Victor pulled Lena into his study and closed the door. Are you okay? He asked, searching her face. How are you feeling about this? Terrified, Lena admitted. Happy. Overwhelmed. All of it at once. Me too. Victor placed his hand on her still flat stomach. I never thought I'd be a father. I'd made peace with that. And now everything changes, Lena finished. Everything already changed the moment you walked into my life. Victor kissed her forehead. This is just the next chapter. But they both knew it was more than that. A baby meant the inheritance was secured, yes, but it also meant Valeria would become even more dangerous. She'd lost the legal battle, but a pregnancy gave her a new target. We don't tell anyone yet, Victor said, his strategic mind already working. Not until after the first trimester, when it's safer, and especially not Valeria or Adrian. Your father knows. My father can be trusted, but the fewer people who know, the better. Victor's expression darkened. Valeria will see this pregnancy as a threat. We need to be prepared for her next move. That move came 3 days later, though not in the way they expected. Lena was in the garden, enjoying the late afternoon sun and trying to ignore her persistent nausea when Marcus found her. Mrs. Moretti, we have a situation. His face was grim. There's been an incident at your mother's house. Lena's blood turned to ice. What kind of incident? A break-in. Your mother is fine, Marcus added quickly, seeing Lena's panic. She wasn't home, but the house was ransacked. Someone was looking for something. Valeria, Lena breathed. That's our assumption. Mrs. Zhao is safe at a neighbor's house, but she's very shaken. She's asking for you. Lena was already moving toward the car. Take me to her, now. Victor insisted on coming despite having meetings scheduled. They found Lena's mother at her neighbor's apartment, wrapped in a blanket and looking smaller than Lena had ever seen her. Mom? Lena pulled her into her arms. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine, sweetheart. Just scared. Her mother's voice trembled. I came home from the grocery store and the door was open. Everything was turned over. Drawers emptied, closets searched, even the floorboards pulled up in places. What were they looking for? Evidence, Victor said quietly. Anything they could use to prove our marriage is fraudulent. Photos, documents, anything that contradicts our story. But there's nothing to find, Lena's mother protested. You two are really married, really in love. They're looking for proof that we're not, Lena explained. Something they can take to the press or the courts to challenge Victor's inheritance. Her mother's expression hardened. That woman, Valeria, she came to the hospital asking questions, and now this. She's trying to destroy you. She's trying, Victor agreed, but she won't succeed. Mrs. Zhao, I'm moving you into our home, permanently. You're not safe as long as Valeria sees you as a potential source of information. I can't impose. You're not imposing. You're family. Victor's tone left no room for argument. Pack what you need. Everything else will replace. Within hours, Lena's mother was installed in one of the guest suites, and Marcus had assigned a dedicated security detail to watch over her. The violation of her home had shaken her badly, but being surrounded by safety and by Lena helped her begin to recover. That night, lying in bed with Victor, Lena whispered, "This has to end. Valeria can't keep terrorizing the people I love." I know, Victor's voice was hard, and it will end soon. How? By giving her what she wants, a confrontation, a final one. The next morning, Victor called a family meeting. Not a private discussion, but a formal gathering of the entire Moretti family and the company's board of directors. He announced it publicly, making it impossible for Valeria or Adrian to refuse without looking weak. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at the family's main office, a sleek building in Midtown that housed the legitimate arms of the Moretti Empire. In the days leading up to it, Victor worked constantly, gathering evidence, building alliances, preparing for what he described as the final move in a very long game. Lena watched him work with a mixture of admiration and fear. This was the Victor his enemies feared, strategic, ruthless, always 3 steps ahead. But she also saw the toll it took on him, the weight of carrying an empire he'd never wanted but refused to let fall. 3 days before the meeting, Giuseppe's condition worsened. Victor spent every spare moment at his father's bedside, and Lena often joined him, the 3 of them talking about everything and nothing, memories, regrets, hopes for the future. "When I'm gone," Giuseppe said during one of these visits, "you need to let go of the parts of this business that are eating at your soul. The protection rackets, the gray area deals, they made sense when I was building the empire. But you're maintaining it now, not building it. You can afford to be more selective. The old guard won't like it," Victor warned. "The old guard are dinosaurs waiting to go extinct. Your child, my great-grandchild, they deserve to inherit something clean, something they can be proud of." Giuseppe looked at Lena. "You'll help him see that, won't you? When he gets too attached to duty and forgets about decency?" "I will," Lena promised. "Good girl." Giuseppe closed his eyes. That's all I needed to hear. The night before the family meeting, Lena couldn't sleep. She stood on the terrace, one hand on her stomach where their child was growing, and wondered what kind of world they were bringing a baby into. Victor found her there, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You should be resting," he chided gently. "So should you. Tomorrow's important." "Tomorrow's just another day," Victor said. "What's important is already here, you, our child, the life we're building." "What are you going to do?" Lena asked. "At the meeting?" Victor was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to offer them a choice. The family, the board, everyone who's been circling like vultures waiting for my father to die. They can accept me as CEO and heir, accept you as my wife and our child as legitimate, and accept that the business is transitioning to fully legal operations, or they can take their shares and leave. You're buying them out. If necessary. I have the capital. My father made sure of that." Victor's expression was determined. "I'm done playing games, done defending my choices, done letting people like Valeria dictate the terms of my life. Tomorrow, I end this." The meeting room at Moretti Holdings was designed to intimidate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a table that could seat 30, original artwork that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. When Lena and Victor entered, the room was already full. Valeria sat at one end of the table, flanked by her lawyers and several board members Victor had identified as her allies. Adrian was there too, looking hungover and hostile, but Giuseppe was also present, having insisted on being wheeled in despite his doctor's protests. His presence changed the entire dynamic of the room. Victor called the meeting to order with quiet authority. "Thank you all for coming. I know there's been speculation about the future of this company, about my marriage, about my fitness to lead, so let's address all of that directly." He began by laying out the company's financials, the profits from legitimate operations, the declining returns from illegal ones, the changing landscape of business in New York. Then he presented his vision, a complete transition to legal operations over the next 5 years, phasing out protection rackets and gray market dealings in favor of real estate, technology investments, and legitimate shipping. "Some of you will see this as betraying what my grandfather and father built," Victor said, looking directly at Valeria. "But they built an empire to protect their family and provide opportunities. That empire has evolved. We need to evolve with it. And if we don't agree," Valeria asked coldly, "then I'll buy out your shares at a generous price and you can invest elsewhere." Victor's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "But make no mistake. I am the heir. My marriage is legal and valid. My child will inherit after me. Those are facts, not negotiable points." "Your child?" Adrian sat up straight. "You're pregnant?" Lena felt every eye in the room turn to her. This wasn't how they'd planned to announce it, but Victor's hand found hers under the table, lending her strength. "Yes," she said clearly, "I'm pregnant, which fulfills the terms of your father's will and secures Victor's inheritance." The room erupted. Some board members looked pleased, others shocked. Valeria's face went white, then red, her hands clenching on the table. "This is convenient timing," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "Almost too convenient. How do we know this pregnancy is real? How do we know it's even Victor's child?" Victor stood so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. "Be very careful what you say next, Valeria." "Why? Because the truth hurts?" Valeria stood as well. "We all know what this marriage is, a sham designed to cheat Adrian and me out of our rightful inheritance. And now suddenly there's a pregnancy? I don't believe it for a second." "Then you're a fool," Giuseppe's voice cut through the room like a knife. All eyes turned to the old man in his wheelchair. "I've seen the test results. I've spoken to their doctors. My granddaughter-in-law is pregnant with my great-grandchild. And if you insult her or my son again, Valeria, you'll find yourself without a share of anything." "Father, you can't possibly—" "I can and I will." Giuseppe's voice was weak, but his words were absolute. "I changed my will last week. Everything, the company, the assets, the entire estate, it all goes to Victor. You and Adrian get a settlement generous enough that you'll never want for anything. But the empire goes to my son, because he's the only one of my children who gives a damn about anything besides money." Valeria looked like she'd been slapped. Adrian's mouth fell open. "You're disinheriting us?" Adrian managed. "I'm protecting what I built from your incompetence and greed." Giuseppe turned to the board members. "Any of you who have a problem with that can tender your resignations. Victor has my full support and confidence. Anyone who undermines him answers to me. Are we clear?" A murmur of assent rippled through the room. The board members who'd been aligned with Valeria suddenly looked uncertain. Valeria stood frozen for a moment, then gathered her things with shaking hands. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Victor said quietly. "You lost, Valeria. Not because I was smarter or more ruthless, but because you forgot that this family is supposed to protect each other, not destroy each other. You can accept the settlement Father's offering, or you can walk away with nothing. Your choice." Valeria looked at her father, at Victor, at Lena. Whatever she saw in their faces made something in her crack. When she spoke again, her voice was defeated. "I want the settlement. In writing. Today." "Done," Giuseppe said. "My lawyers will have the papers ready within the hour." Valeria left without another word, Adrian trailing behind her like a lost puppy. The board members who'd supported them suddenly found reasons to congratulate Victor, to assure him of their loyalty, to express enthusiasm for his vision of the company's future. When the room finally emptied, only Giuseppe, Victor, and Lena remained. "That was quite a performance, Father," Victor said. "It wasn't a performance. I meant every word." Giuseppe reached for Victor's hand. "I should have done this years ago. Put you in charge, cut out the dead weight, trusted you to know what's best for our family. I'm sorry it took me so long." "You gave me the push I needed," Victor said, echoing his father's earlier words. "That's enough." Giuseppe turned to Lena. "And you, daughter, take care of my son. Take care of my great-grandchild. And for the love of all that's holy, don't let him work himself to death trying to prove he's worthy of something he's always deserved." "I won't," Lena promised, tears streaming down her face. "Good." Giuseppe closed his eyes, suddenly looking exhausted. "Now take me home. I'm too old for this much excitement." Giuseppe Moretti died 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep with Victor at his bedside. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people from every strata of New York society, from politicians to street vendors, all coming to pay respects to a man who'd been both feared and respected in equal measure. Lena stood beside Victor throughout, her hand in his, her presence a constant reminder that he wasn't alone in his grief. At the graveside, Victor spoke about his father's legacy, about the lessons learned, about the weight of inheritance and the responsibility it carried. His voice was steady, controlled, the perfect image of a man in command. But that night, alone in their bedroom, he finally broke. Lena held him while he cried for the father he'd loved despite everything, for the relationship they'd never quite managed to build, for the approval he'd finally earned just before it was too late. "He was proud of you," Lena whispered. "He told me so, the day we told him about the baby. He said you'd become the man he always hoped you'd be." "I wish he'd said it to me." "He did, in his own way." Lena pulled back to look at Victor's face. "He gave you the company. He trusted you with his legacy. That was his way of saying he believed in you." Victor nodded, wiping his eyes. "I'm going to make him proud. I'm going to transform this company into something our child can be proud of." "I know you will," Lena said. "We'll do it together." The next months were a whirlwind. Victor took over as CEO officially, implementing the changes he'd promised, shutting down illegal operations, transitioning resources to legitimate business, offering generous severance to anyone who didn't want to make the change. There was resistance, but with Giuseppe's will backing him and the board's grudging support, Victor pushed through. Valeria took her settlement and moved to Italy, cutting ties with the family entirely. Adrian burned through his settlement within a year and came crawling back asking for a job. Victor gave him one, a low-level position in the shipping division where he couldn't cause much damage, but could earn an honest living. "You're too forgiving," Lena said when Victor told her about hiring Adrian. "I'm not forgiving anything," Victor corrected. "But he's still my brother, and our child deserves to know their uncle, even if he's a disaster." Lena's pregnancy progressed smoothly despite the stress. She continued her nursing studies remotely, determined to finish her degree even as her life transformed in ways she'd never imagined. Victor was attentive to the point of obsession, monitoring every doctor's appointment, reading every pregnancy book, preparing the nursery with meticulous care. "You know we don't need a professional-grade changing table, right?" Lena teased as Victor assembled yet another piece of expensive baby furniture. "Our child deserves the best. Our child will be happy with clean diapers and love. Everything else is extra." Victor paused, setting down his screwdriver. "I want to give them everything I didn't have. Not things, necessarily, but presence, attention, the knowledge that they're wanted and loved." Lena's heart squeezed. "They'll have all of that, I promise." On a crisp October morning, 6 months after Giuseppe's death and 8 months after that first pregnancy test, Lena went into labor. Victor, for all his preparation and planning, completely fell apart. He forgot the hospital bag. He tried to drive them himself before Marcus gently suggested that perhaps a professional driver would be better given Victor's panic. He called the doctor 4 times in the car ride alone. "Victor," Lena said between contractions, "you've negotiated with mobsters and faced down your entire family. You can handle this." "Those things made sense," Victor said, gripping her hand. "This is completely irrational and terrifying." Lena laughed despite the pain. "Welcome to parenthood." The labor lasted 14 hours. Victor stayed by Lena's side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, looking absolutely wrecked every time she cried out in pain. When the doctor finally said it was time to push, Victor looked like he might pass out. "Don't you dare faint," Lena ordered. "I need you here." "I'm here," Victor promised. "I'm not going anywhere." 3 pushes later, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the delivery room. The nurse placed her on Lena's chest, and Lena looked down at the tiny, perfect face of her child and felt her entire world shift on its axis. "She's beautiful," Victor whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's absolutely perfect." "She is," Lena agreed, unable to look away from their daughter's face. "What should we name her?" They'd debated names for months without deciding. But looking at their daughter now, Victor said quietly, "Sophia, after my mother." "Sophia João Moretti," Lena said, testing it out. "It's perfect." Victor kissed Lena's forehead, then gently touched Sophia's tiny hand. Their daughter wrapped her fingers around his, holding on with surprising strength. "Hello, little one," Victor murmured. "I'm your father, and I promise you, I will spend every day of my life making sure you know you're loved." In the waiting room, Lena's mother wept happy tears when they brought Sophia out to meet her. "She's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and she has your father's nose, Lena." Over the next days, a stream of visitors came, business associates bearing gifts, household staff wanting to meet the newest Moretti, friends from Lena's nursing program who'd stuck by her through all the scandal. Even Adrian came, looking uncomfortable but genuinely moved when he held his niece. She's so small, he said, cradling Sophia with surprising gentleness. I forgot how small they are. You have children? Lena asked, surprised. 2 sons. They live with their mother in California. I don't see them much. Adrian looked down at Sophia. Maybe I should change that. Maybe you should, Victor agreed quietly. When they finally brought Sophia home, the house felt different, warmer somehow, more alive. The sterile perfection that had intimidated Lena when she first arrived had been replaced by the comfortable chaos of a lived-in home. Baby toys in the living room, a bassinet in the master bedroom, the sound of Sophia's cries and coos filling the air. One evening, when Sophia was 3 months old, Lena found Victor in the nursery, holding their sleeping daughter and staring out the window at the gardens. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. About how different my life is now compared to a year ago, Victor said. A year ago, I was alone, going through the motions, building an empire I didn't care about for people I didn't like. And now, Lena prompted, now I have everything that matters. Victor looked at her, his expression open and unguarded. I have you. I have Sophia. I have a purpose that's about more than just power or money. I have a reason to be better. Lena crossed the room to stand beside him, looking down at their daughter's peaceful face. Do you ever regret it? How we started? The contract, the deal? All of it? Never, Victor said without hesitation. Because that contract brought you into my life, and you transformed everything. We transformed each other, Lena corrected. I'm not the same woman who walked into that restaurant desperate and afraid. No, you're stronger, braver, more yourself than ever. And you're softer, more human, less afraid to feel things. Victor smiled. We're a good team. The best, Lena agreed. They stood together in the quiet nursery, their daughter sleeping peacefully in Victor's arms, and Lena marveled at how far they'd come. From a desperate deal in a Tribeca restaurant to this moment, a real family, real love, a real life built on a foundation that had started as anything but real. 6 months after Sophia's birth, Victor made his final major change to the company. He established the Giuseppe Moretti Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to providing healthcare access and financial literacy education to underserved communities. Lena became the foundation's director, using her nursing background and her lived experience with debt and desperation to help people in situations similar to where she'd once been. This is what the money should do, Victor said at the foundation's launch event. Help people. Give them options. Prevent them from ending up in the kind of desperate situations that make them vulnerable to exploitation. Even though that desperation brought us together, Lena teased. Especially because of that, Victor said seriously. No one should have to choose between their family's safety and their own freedom. If our foundation can prevent even one person from facing that choice, it's worth every penny. The foundation thrived. Within a year, they'd helped hundreds of families get out of debt, provided health care to thousands, and created educational programs that gave people tools to build better futures. Lena threw herself into the work with passion, bringing Sophia to the office sometimes, wanting their daughter to grow up understanding that privilege came with responsibility. On Sophia's first birthday, they threw a party at the estate, not the formal, stuffy affairs the Moretti family was known for, but a genuine celebration with balloons and cake and children running through the gardens. Lena's mother was there, healthier than she'd been in years. Adrian came with his sons, working on rebuilding that relationship. Even some of the old board members showed up, won over by Victor's leadership and the company's success. As Lena watched Victor play with Sophia in the garden, their daughter squealing with delight as her father made funny faces, she felt a hand on her shoulder. One of Giuseppe's oldest friends, a man who'd known the Moretti family for 50 years, stood beside her. Giuseppe would be so proud, he said quietly, of Victor, of what he's done with the company, of the family he's built. This, he gestured at the scene before them. This is the legacy Giuseppe really wanted. Not power or money, but happiness, purpose, love. I wish he could see it, Lena said. I think he can. The old man smiled. And I think he's very pleased indeed. That night, after the guests had left and Sophia was asleep, Lena and Victor sat on their terrace with wine, and the comfortable silence of people who'd learned to exist in each other's spaces without needing to fill every moment with words. "Do you remember the contract?" Lena asked suddenly. "The original one, with all its terms and conditions?" "Of course," Victor said. "Why? What happened to it? After the court case?" "I burned it." Victor sipped his wine. "Along with the prenuptial agreement and every other legal document that tried to define what we were. Those papers didn't mean anything anymore." "When did you burn them?" "The night we found out you were pregnant." Victor looked at her. "I realized that whatever we'd started as, we'd become something that couldn't be contained in a contract. So I destroyed the only evidence that we'd ever been anything less than what we are now. Two people who chose each other and keep choosing each other every day." Lena leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "I would choose you again," she said quietly. "Even knowing everything that would happen, the scandal, the threats, the pain, I'd choose you 1,000 times over." "Only 1,000?" Victor teased. "1,000,000 then. 1,000,000,000. However many times it takes to get to forever." Victor kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Forever works for me." They sat together as the stars came out over the garden, and Lena thought about the journey that had brought them here. From desperation to hope, from a contract to a commitment, from strangers to partners to the family they'd built together. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been conventional, but it had been real, every messy, complicated, beautiful moment of it. Inside the house, Sophia stirred in her crib, making the small sounds that meant she'd wake soon, wanting to be fed. Lena stood to go to her, but Victor stood with her. "Together?" he asked. "Always," Lena replied. They walked inside hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, the sleepless nights and the difficult days, the joys and the challenges, the ordinary magic of building a life with the people you loved. The contract that had brought them together was gone, burned to ash and scattered to the wind. But what remained was stronger than any legal document could ever be: love, family, choice. And in the end, those were the only terms that mattered. Years later, when Sophia was old enough to ask how her parents had met, Lena and Victor would tell her a simplified version of the truth, that they'd made a deal that turned into something neither expected, that sometimes love found you in the strangest places, and that pathé best things in life were often the ones you never planned for. But late at night, when it was just the two of them, they would remember the whole truth, the desperation, the deal, the transformation. They would remember the woman who'd walked into a restaurant willing to sell a year of her life, and the man who'd offered her a contract when he'd never expected to offer his heart. They would remember, and they would be grateful, because that impossible deal, that unlikely arrangement, had given them everything that mattered. It had given them each other. And in the end, that was worth more than any inheritance, any empire, any fortune in the world. Their story had started with a contract written in ink on expensive paper, full of terms and conditions and careful legal language. But it would end, years and years from now, in a future they were building together one day at a time, with a love that needed no documentation, no proof, no validation from anyone but themselves. A love that had been earned through choice, forged through challenges, and strengthened through every moment they decided to stay, to fight, to choose each other over everything else. The deal that had changed everything had become the foundation of something far more valuable than either of them could have imagined. It had become home.